Welcome to Blank Check. My name is Griffin Newman. I live in Blank Check. I am known as Downtown Griffy Nooms. There is a story behind that. There are many stories in Blank Check. Some of them are sad, some funny. Some of them are stories of madness, of violence. Some are ordinary, yet they all have about them a sense of mystery, the mystery of life. Sometimes the mystery of death, the mystery of this studio. The studio surrounding Blank Check. To introduce this story, let me just say it encompasses the all. It is beyond the fire, though few would know that meaning. It is a story of many, but begins with two. Two friends. And I was one of them. The one leading to the many is the podcast. The podcast is the one.
Now, that's the Log Lady's introduction
Yes.
to the pilot.
Correct?
For Bravo TV, I assume. Was it Bravo?
Oh, those were all done. Okay.
After.
This was, look, it's one of the things about me that people would often be astounded by, that I never watched the show.
You don't have the lore. You're new to the lore.
Well, there's a lot of it I got by osmosis, but some of it I've been confused by, and it's very interesting to watch this show now.
Mm-hmm.
After multiple waves of like
memes.
Well, it's initial obsessive grip on the culture.
Well, you
right?
missed that.
Then it's linger. I was alive. I wouldn't have been watching
1 year old.
I would not have been watching, but I was alive. My ears were perked.
Little toddler Griffin just sort of osmosis, like there's something on ABC
My
that's
ears were
really turning people's heads.
Dropping Hollywood Reporter in the crib. I was leafing through. I had an Amy Archer mobile.
An Amy Archer mobile. Wow.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Love
you.
that.
Thank you. And then there's, yes, it's like lingering sort of legacy, it getting replayed on Bravo, it finally going to streaming, which I feel like gave it a huge modern wind, and then the return and all this sort of stuff. I was watching this and I'm like, it's astounding how big certain characters loom in culture relative to how small they are on the show.
Like the Log Lady?
Yes. And then I'm like watching it on I got this fucking cinder block of a fucking Blu-ray set, right? That has like everything on it. And I start seeing there's the option, watch with previously on, with preview, with Log Lady intros. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm missing. When it aired on broadcast, people were seeing the Log Lady at the beginning of every episode.
No.
Wrong. This was done later, like 10 years later?
He filmed them all in 1993 when the show was syndicated to Bravo. I guess back in the day, it's like, you only have 28 episodes. You're not going to syndicate to like real TV, but
sure,
there's something called Bravo now.
So wait a second. The quote I just did is something that actually wasn't part of the proper thing?
It's on the DVD.
I feel like the Log Lady introductions have become quite important.
Well, let me say something else then.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, that's a damn fine podcast.
Okay, great. Wow.
Damn fine. Ben?
Podcast.
I sent a text and said, does anyone want coffee? And Ben's response was one word.
Wait. I got you covered. I brought coffee today.
Brew in a pot.
It just felt right.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
David's got a half-empty McDonald's cup full of water and
That's
ice,
right.
of course.
That's right. Yeah.
But the other
Do you
three
think
of
there's
us.
a McDonald's in Twin Peaks?
Oh, absolutely.
Have you been there? I mean, I
Our
know
guest
it
is
doesn't
shaking
exist.
her head no.
Our guest says no.
It does exist, and I lived there.
Yeah, David, what are you talking about?
I mean, it has a different it has a different name in reality.
I think you're being rude. I think you're being rude to our guest's homeland, her motherland.
But there's no McDonald's.
No, there's a burger place called Small Fries.
Oh,
pretty good name.
Yeah.
You asked me to introduce the show, and I think I already did about as succinctly as I could have in the opening. But this is Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
It's a podcast about filmographies and sometimes TV shows.
Yeah.
Directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. Sometimes those checks clear and sometimes they bounce. Baby.
Yeah, this is actually part of our Leslie Linka Glatter series.
It is. Yes.
One of the great TV
We're
directors.
doing kind of a sneaky, it's like a Christopher McQuarrie. We're going to piecemeal a Glatter series. Now and then?
She did direct Now and Then, the iconic VHS classic of any millennial youth.
And did she do another feature?
It's called The Proposition, and it stars Madeline Stowe and Kenneth Branagh and Robert Loggia.
Huh.
Came out in 1998. I don't really know anything else about it. Poorly received. I see. Okay.
Talking about cult TV shows with sacred object DVD collections and such, the one I was obsessed with, unsurprisingly, was Freaks and Geeks.
Sure.
And there was the...
She directed a few of those.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember, there was the high-end sort of like limited run
Of course.
Shout
The Shout
Factory,
of
the
course.
yearbook.
Yeah, with the multiple commentaries on every... That's like the
Yeah.
original, to me, the original like TV box set that was so special.
Incredible.
Yeah.
My most sacred object, but
Right.
it came in the yearbook replica that had like 200 pages of writing from everyone who ever worked on the show about everything.
Sure.
And like recaps on every episode. And I just remember...
Yeah, she only did one, but she did Kim Kelly is My Friend, which might be
That's
the
the
best episode. Right.
Apatow said that
Might be.
he hired her onto it because Leslie Mann had worked with her and said she's the best director I've ever worked with. And he said, when I watched her work, I understood why.
Wow.
Anyway, this is a miniseries on the films of David Lynch. It is called Twin Pods Fire Cast With Me.
Sure.
And today we're talking about Twin Peaks Season 1.
The first season of Twin Peaks.
What do we hate doing on this show?
Television.
Hate doing seasons of television. And if we must do them often, it is against our will on Patreon.
Right.
Punted to Patreon.
We've only done television once before on the main
That's
feed.
not true. We did it twice and it broke us and we basically vowed to never
Yeah,
do
we
it
did
again.
Roadies and Sense8.
We did them back
Oh, God.
to back. We did
Yeah.
2 seasons miniseries in our first year of being blank check that ended with, and these filmmakers have now recently done a season of television.
Right. I didn't watch Sense8. That was one where I was like, boys, that's on you.
It was a different era for the show.
If you were going to pick Roadies or Sense8, I would say I would now probably say Sense8, but Roadies probably spoke to Ben more.
Yeah.
I also didn't
Roadies
finish
is
watching
just
it.
Roadies is forgotten.
Yeah, Roadies-
Like people who are in Roadies would deny being in
I believe
Roadies.
Roadies is not watchable anymore.
Like Sense8, it's like, oh, it actually ran for 2 seasons, then fans pushed for
Yeah.
a finale episode.
did
That's
it,
nice.
yeah.
They did it.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. It speaks to their, you
and
know.
it was so
Did
early
you see
in
Sense8,
Netflix
Eva?
blank check.
No.
It's fun.
You'd find both of those shows interesting.
Yeah.
Roadies is tough.
You never saw
Roadies.
Roadies?
No.
Do
and
you
I-
remember what Roadies is?
It's a Cameron Crowe show, right?
Cameron Crowe and Winnie Holzman.
Okay.
So it's
Yeah.
like Cameron Crowe and My So-Called Life
Yeah.
making a show about present-day roadies
But
as part of a...
they didn't make it in the 90s when they were good at doing
Right.
things. They
Yeah.
made it in the 2010s
Yes.
for Showtime. Who is in it?
Who's in it?
Poots?
Who isn't in it? Imogen Poots, Rafe Spall, Machine Gun
Rafe
Kelly,
Spall.
Finesse Mitchell.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Ron
Tater
White?
Salad. Ron White.
I like Ron White.
Keisha Castle Hughes.
Yeah, she was one of the roadies. They were all roadies. I
Was
guess.
MC Gainey on it, or am I imagining MC Gainey was on it?
You're
Am I
are you just thinking about
auto-completing?
Ron White and you're kind of like, MC Gainey might be
But he
near
might
him.
have also been on it.
Roadies.
Is it on HBO? What was it on?
It was on Showtime.
Nowhere. It's on Showtime, and it
Showtime.
doesn't exist. It's in
Carla
the Red Room.
Gugino and Luke
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes, right.
I'm also. What was
Truly.
the Scorsese show about rock and roll?
The one I was
Final,
on.
the one that Griffin was in
You were
every
in it.
episode.
Okay, so
Yep.
those two get. I'm sorry, Griffin. Those do get combined in my head sometimes.
Eva, this is the first time anyone has shown disrespect to vinyl. I can't believe this rudeness.
Which also gets mixed up in my head with "I'm Dying Up Here."
Sure.
Oh,
that's yes.
That one was tough.
Right.
I watched every episode of that one.
This is why it's weird that you missed
I
Roadie.
love TV shows about stand-up comedy. They always
Yes.
nail it.
Well,
Right.
they always throw away their routine and get
Yep.
real
Yes.
every episode,
And it works.
and people love it.
And it changes the world.
It does.
Yeah.
Even in Baby Reindeer, it works. It
Yeah.
works in
Ugh.
every time you do it.
always
I'm never
works.
watching that shit.
I'm glad that
Throw
we're
it out.
talking about some of the most forgotten television of the last 10 years on an episode about one of the most impactful TV shows of all time.
Last time we talked about Studio 60 for like an hour.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we're not going to do that this time. We have to talk about Twin Peaks, but I was just wanted to check. Is this really, we really never did TV on main feed again? This is the first time
It
since
sounds right.
Sense8 or, since Roadies?
I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
Right.
That's
we did
crazy.
Little Drummer Girl. We did
On
Paranoia
Patreon.
Agent recently.
Right.
What was
Um,
Jane Campion's?
Top of, like
Oh,
both of those were on
yeah.
Patreon.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
One great season, one demented season.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I feel
indeed.
like Top of the Lake might have been the first time since the Roadie Sense8 thing that we broke the rule and did a full season because it felt
because it was like
too important?
She's,
Right,
right.
right.
She's really a part of this show. Blah blah blah.
Look, we usually try to talk our way out of it. And this is a case where it was undeniable. It's not only do you have to do it, but you have to figure out a complicated way to cover all of it.
Mm.
Our guest today, a former resident of Twin Peaks, a very real town where she lived.
Yep.
Eva Anderson, the best guest in podcasting.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here, guys. And thank you so much for asking me to cover
We
Twin Peaks.
were thinking of who felt like
Who,
the
if
right
anyone,
guest.
right,
Yes.
wanted
It was
to
like, is there
sign up
any
for
guest who
this.
could fit it? Is it too big an assignment? And then I was like, crazy to just throw Eva the ask. Feels like an obvious ask. And then you said this has a very specific personal meaning to me, season 1 in particular. Do you want to just come out and say this?
Well, just after season 1, between season 1 and 2, my family moved to the town where they filmed Twin Peaks, and I lived there for 10 years.
because of the show, right?
Yes.
Largely inspired by?
Your family was like, we just love the vibe, and so let's go there?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the town called? I'm sorry.
There's 3 towns that make up the show.
Okay.
They're in a row in the Snoqualmie Valley. The first town where I lived is called Falls City, Washington.
Mhm.
It has the Roadhouse.
Okay.
The next town is Snoqualmie, Washington. It has the Lodge and the Falls. And the third town
Oh, yeah.
is North Bend,
Right.
which has the cafe.
Wow.
But they're all very close together.
Yeah, they're-
just in a row. That's like 1, 2, 3.
Route 202.
Yep.
So you spent like your adolescence here.
Middle and high school.
Wow.
Yeah. And then when I graduated high school, right around that time, my parents got divorced. Everyone moved. So like there was no more footprint as soon as I graduated high
Right.
school.
Like you
Everyone
couldn't
left.
go back. Right.
Post
there
high
was
school,
nothing.
there was kind of a Twin Peaks season 2 vibe where
Yeah.
things went off the rails quickly.
Very just weird detail. I don't know if you guys know this, that when my parents split up and moved, my dad moved into the house from Inception.
No, what? Wait, which house?
Which house from Inception?
The main one where the kids are.
Sure. Where
Yeah, yeah.
The one he's trying to get back
get
to.
back
Yes.
to.
So we lived
I think it's
there.
like floor 3 in his mind elevator or whatever. I can't remember.
It's in Pasadena. My brother and I lived there for
It's in
several
Leonardo's
years.
head. It's not in Pasadena.
I
This
know.
This is obviously years before Inception.
Years before
It's
Inception.
a very nice looking house.
Beautiful
It's made by Green and Green, who made the Gamble House and like Doc Brown's house from Back to the
Eva,
Future.
is what you're saying right now real?
It is actually true.
Fuck.
Yeah, spin the top. You're
top's
trying to
top
spin the
spinning.
top. Oh wow, it's all the way over there.
So just rolled right from this place to that place in a very
Whoa.
strange way. Also, just side note, like my brother was like, "Do not get super high and see Inception." He warned me.
Because of
Oh,
the
'cause
house
of
that
that.
would flip you out?
Because he spotted the house first, and then he was like,
Gotcha.
"When you go, just be aware the house is in it."
When you lived in Fall City,
Yes,
like, what year are we talking? You moved there.
we moved in 1990, the summer of 1990.
Okay, so like it
my
had
I-
just
Right after.
aired.
yes,
The first season had just aired.
yes.
The
So, like, there
season
probably-
ends in May 1990.
And season 2 starts in September 1990.
But there probably isn't even much. Was there tourism yet?
A
I
little
guess?
bit.
Just a little bit.
there was like Japanese tourism,
Wow,
weirdly,
yeah.
and like, and there was like a little.
Best tourists
like,
on earth.
there were
They're
little
finding it right away.
buses. Yes, there was a little gift shop where they sold like Twin Peaks stuff.
Mhm.
Sure.
They sold like the Diary of Laura Palmer, which was
Of course.
written by
Jennifer Lynch.
Jennifer
Yes.
Lynch, and people would go to the cafe because that was the
Because
thing.
it just looked like that.
Yeah, it was that it hadn't changed. They hadn't changed it for the show very much.
Right.
And years later, when they filmed The Return, it had gone through like a bunch of evolutions, and then they restored it to the
Wild.
original. So it's now, I believe, if you go, it should just look. It was a Tweety Bird themed cafe in the middle.
That
called
rules?
It's still called Tweeds, but then they made it just look like the original for The Return.
Connor Rall, a friend of the show, will be on an upcoming episode. Is a Twin Peaks obsessive.
Cool.
We were doing George Lucas talk shows in Seattle earlier this year, and he was like, I want to go to all
It's
the
not
Twin Peaks
that
locations.
far, right.
Yeah,
I
it's
wanna
like 45 minutes to an hour.
make an effort to
Yeah.
go to the Laura Palmer house and all these things. Didn't join him on any of them.
I wouldn't
This
wanna
was
go
in
to the
March.
Palmer House. That's
Cool.
And I
spooky.
was like, I'm going to be an asshole if Lynch wins this competition that is
Didn't get to
currently
go.
going on, where he's the tipped front runner. And I didn't go to any of these locations. But the thing he told me was that they got a pie at the diner,
Mhm.
Sure.
and it was terrible.
Sure.
Oh,
And
really?
then they bought a pie to go and brought it to one of the show and tried to get audience members to eat it. And every local in the audience was
Like,
like,
bad
everyone
pies,
knows the
right.
pie is bad. Do
Mm.
you have any memory or experience with the pie?
Yeah.
And do you remember it being bad?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really bad.
It's kind of wild. I understand they don't want to solely exist as a tourist attraction.
That they never fixed it.
I would just put a little extra effort into that
Here's
if
the
I
thing.
were them.
A couple times as adults, my brother and I have had individual work in Seattle.
Your great brother Dash.
My great brother Dash, my great little brother, my great big little brother.
One of the great big little brothers. He's very tall.
He's tall.
He is really tall, but he's really little brother.
Yeah.
But we will be in Seattle, get an Uber, take it to the cafe, order the pie.
Yeah.
Eat the pie, take a picture of the pie, send it to each other, go, still sucks shit. And then go all the way back to Seattle. It's like $200 worth of Ubers.
But it's nice to see Tweeties.
Oh, yeah.
This is what I like about you, Eva. You're such an experiential person.
really
you have
are,
to
Eva.
do the thing.
But like, right, you put so much effort into an experience you know will suck.
Yes.
But you're into that. You're like, this is going to be
you
great.
curate that.
Right.
And I love that in March, they still hadn't fixed it.
Yeah.
It was bad when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I think that, there's just a problem there. It's never going to be good.
Yeah.
It's just like,
But how is that an unfixable
It's
problem?
also so funny that
it's kind of
Connor...
hard to make good pie
Sure.
on a bigger scale, like that's going to sit out. It's not that hard. I'm not
It's
really
a cafe.
defending them.
Yeah.
It's a coffee shop. They don't
Right.
make that many pies a day. Like,
That's the thing.
I'm doing my best to
It doesn't
defend.
isn't
even
like
di-
4 and 20 Blackbirds makes more cherry pies a day than
Well, those
Tweeds.
guys
I would
know what
argue
they're
it doesn't
doing.
even need to be the best pie on earth. It doesn't
No.
need to
Just
live up to the
fine.
show. It needs to be at least perfunctory, which everyone has told me it is well below.
Yes, and it's just so funny because I've only ever had this opinion with Dash, and the fact that
Interesting.
Connor came to it immediately.
And then the audience.
without being fed it.
Connor was like, we buy this pie, everyone in the audience will try one. And the audience was like, we all live here. We know it sucks shit.
It's kind of
no
like
one's taking a slice.
the Tom's restaurant up in
Sure.
Seinfeld Morningside
diner.
Heights, the
Yes.
Seinfeld restaurant.
Very similar.
Everyone knows that place sucks.
Yes.
No offense to it.
Yeah.
And if we have any listeners from Tom's,
Yes.
that's another place that people go because they're like, look, and then they go in and they're like, wait, this is like
I guess this
a
is the
bad
argument.
diner.
Is
Like,
there
how is it
any-
bad?
Is there any impetus for them to make it
No,
better?
like the
People are
money's
coming
coming
no matter
in.
what.
Right. They're
yeah.
going to sell so many fucking slices of pie a day.
In fact, they may say it ain't broke. Why
Right,
try to?
right.
Like we could screw something up here.
But it also it says something else about the general area.
Mhm.
Is that things I always wonder if Lynch was just like sensing a way in which things are just a little off there.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Things are just weird there.
Yes.
And having grown up there or lived there for
Right.
so long, I was just like, there is a vibe there.
Maybe
That felt accurate.
It felt, and the pie being good would not make sense in that
Sure.
place.
maybe I would go if I went to Twin Peaks, not Fall City, Twin Peaks.
Yes.
I might be like, this town is kind of weird and depressing. And scary stuff seems to happen here all the time. I
Sure.
do like the aesthetic.
Yes.
I like the vibe.
Sure.
But I think I'm going to clear on out.
Yeah.
I'm going.
You'd move.
And Dale Cooper's like, takes one, bite of that pie and he's like, I love it here.
Well, isn't this one of the key things of the show that you're like, is Dale Cooper the normal one or the weirdest one?
He's the weirdest one. He's a freak.
Of
He
Or
course.
is
loves
he
it.
Of course.
stupid?
Right.
Well,
but,
he's kinda
but in that
stupid,
way
too.
where it's like
I love
his
him.
reaction to
We
the
all love
pie and the coffee.
Right.
Does
That's
that
what
mean
I'm
that
saying.
the pie and the coffee are excellent, or is this a sign of his insanity?
His like incredible optimism. Also,
Yes.
watching this time, the coffee he likes isn't even from the diner. He likes any cup of coffee
That's true.
anyone pours for
That's
him
true.
If
anywhere.
he is served black coffee,
Right.
he's thrilled.
There's the
he never had it?
There's the fishy coffee is the only coffee he doesn't like.
He does, and that does disturb him profoundly.
It sticks with him.
yeah.
that the coffee has been spoiled.
By
Is there something
fish.
in the
There was a
water
fish in the percolite.
in that part of the
Oh.
country? Is that maybe it's like
Mm.
our bagels here?
Yes.
Is there something about the quality of the water that is making the coffee enhanced in some way?
Well, that is one thing too that is true. Is that the Pacific Northwest is all about coffee in a big way.
Sure.
Of course, it's
They invented
the
Starbucks.
land of Starbucks.
Right.
Yes.
Drive-through espresso.
Yeah.
There's like even the live bait shops also sell espresso. Everywhere sells espresso.
And this show is kind of broadcasting that at a time before coffee has gone really nationwide. Coffee
Yes.
culture has taken over in that kind of way outside of offices and home breakfast tables and whatever. Breakfast tables. What the fuck am I talking about?
Breakfast tables.
Yeah.
Listen, we're here to discuss Twin Peaks, the 1990 television mystery serial drama series created by Mark Frost and David Lynch that aired on ABC.
Quite impactful.
Which was a phenomenon briefly and then a phenomenon in a larger way after its
It is
departure.
so
from
wild
our
to just like
airwaves.
dig into the actual timeline and be like, it was only 8 episodes the first season.
Yeah.
It premieres across like April and May
Yes.
of 1990, and it is canceled within 1 year. Like they
Yes.
do a 22 episode season 2 that starts in September. By 1 year later, the thing is like done.
Mhm.
And then Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me coming a year after that
Right.
is like the last Hail Mary pass that people turn on.
Right.
And you're like, this entire phenomenon has been contained within 24 months.
It's so crazy.
And the arc of it, the like rise and fall, and in the public perception at the time, the even further fall down into like the depths of hell.
But always had its sort of Star Trek-esque diehards.
Lingered.
Who then like sort of gathered around all the ephemera,
Yes.
the aesthetics,
Mm-hmm.
It getting turned
the
into like, yeah.
tchotchkes, you know, like, which is a very funny thing to do around a show that is profoundly disturbing, but
Mhm.
also is incredibly charming.
And funny.
But also
very
like
funny.
like video games like Alan Wake or
Yes.
like a lot of horror stuff
100%.
is just
It's still got a
Cribbing.
yes, 100%.
or in a loving way.
There's so many
There's
things.
something odd about small towns if you think about it.
I
A
disagree.
little Lynchian.
Twin Peaks. So, Ben, you had never seen Twin Peaks.
Ben had seen
No,
Twin Peaks.
I had
Ben
seen
had
it.
seen
I'm the
Twin
one who
Peaks.
hadn't seen Twin
I'm
Peaks.
trying to remember. That's why I'm doing this. You saw all of season 1. Like what extent?
I watched up to a certain point in season 2.
Right. A lot of
And
people
then
sort of
I
tail
sort of
off in
fell
season 2.
off.
Me too.
Right.
Yeah.
Griffin, you had never seen
Yes.
Twin Peaks. He's going under the table to get his Inception top because he's so worried.
I was very worried.
Sorry.
I'd seen the pilot only.
Right. Sure. Right.
Yes.
Why did you resist?
I don't know. I actually don't know. You know what my memory is? I'm trying to get off. I'm trying to line up timelines here. When did The Return air?
2017.
So that I want to say was
Mason?
Were you trying to say like it's The Tick or something? Like you were
yes.
working
I think
on
I was
something?
trying to watch it in anticipation of The Return coming out, going like, now's the time for me to actually get into it. My best friends and roommates at the time, Sophie and Hawken, had watched it maybe a year or two earlier when it was on Netflix. And they were like, you would love this. And then I think I was like, okay, it's time for me to finally do it, knowing this new season's coming. I think my brain could not handle it in the midst of Tick production
Got it.
when I was
It's not-
already losing my mind. And then I just never kind of went back around to it, which was my failing.
I watched it like so many people in my generation. I was too young for Twin Peaks, obviously, on air. But I'd heard about it.
So I wasn't the only one.
But I'd heard about it, and my
Sure.
father especially would talk about it with some reverence, not just for the show, but just kind of like that was crazy when
cultural moment.
when it was like
Yes.
a thing for a couple months
Yeah.
there. And then, like so many kids, I bought the DVDs when I was 18 years old and
Sure.
watched them in college
Yes.
Ooh.
and loved them. And also washed out somewhere in season 2 the first time around.
Uh-huh.
Everybody does, I think. It's a bit of a rite of passage. Not to say I think season 2 is very interesting and we're going to have lots to say about it. I've watched it all. Do not fear.
Uh-huh.
That's later.
Sure.
Eva, what's your experience of Twin Peaks apart from the fact that you lived there?
Well, because we had the Laserdisc, which had the European cut of the pilot, which was as long as a movie
Yes.
and has the Red Room.
Yeah.
It ends with the Red Room.
Yes, we will briefly touch on how strange that thing is. Yes.
But that was the only Twin Peaks I watched probably till I was almost 30.
Okay.
Was just watching that.
That's
thing.
wild. So
Yeah.
your parents are watching it and they decide
Yeah.
to move there, and you are just kind of like, okay, you don't really understand why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think I was just like I was 8. Like
Right.
I mean I was
You were too little for Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Yes,
And-
sure.
but I also I think it was all just too much. Like in my when normally people were watching in college, I was like, it's like Pee Wee being like, I don't need to watch it, Dottie. I lived it. Like
Yeah.
I was just like, I don't need to engage with this right now.
Yeah.
And so by the time I finally did, I loved it. It was great. And I
Yeah.
just finally sat down. I was like, why? It's crazy that
What's
I haven't
been
watched
keeping me
this.
from
Yeah.
watching
And I've watched it many times since. But yeah, it took me a long time to be ready to just crack my knuckles and be like, I'm going to engage with this thing. And yeah, I mean, season 1 is just it's so perfect. It's great.
It's just so wild where you're saying stuff like Alan Wake, and there's so many examples of things that feel so influenced by Twin Peaks. And especially if you think about the 10 to 15 year period in between the show ending and the sort of maybe second, third wave that leads to the return coming around. When its legacy was a little bit, they blew it.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing and it got fucked up. The amount of work that is like deeply, clearly influenced by it and trying to recapture some element of it, it feels like the kind of thing you watch season 1 and you're like, I can imagine the universe in which these 8 episodes played, no one watched them. Everyone who watched it was profoundly changed by it. It had a sort of like, only 100 people ever saw the fucking Velvet Underground live sort of energy, and people stuck to it, and it's this weird unfinished project. The weirder thing than it collapsing so quickly is that it was so big so briefly.
Mm-hmm.
That remains kind of astounding, and it feels like a very early lesson of, oh, the audience is not as dumb as TV people think they are.
Sure. Yep.
In this era, like up until that point, you read about like the anticipation of the show coming out and being like, people are going to hate this.
Right.
This is not passive viewing. It doesn't hold your hand. It's too weird. This is going to flop. And then it like blows up.
But also one might argue that what ruined it is the TV person
Yes.
believing the audience was stupid.
The second they had a hit and then they had to try to game it out.
Have you watched season 2 yet?
I've started it. I'm a handful of episodes.
I
think
so you're going to get into that.
You'll
Sorry.
realize what, I think you'll see. Like
I'm still in
it's-
the good chunk.
But it's not just, I think the fandom gets a little too simple with like, well, Iger made them reveal the killer and that ruined the show. I don't agree that ruined the show. I think it's just like, it was, no one making that show was equipped for the absolute marathon of 22 episode season television at the time.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, you better have all your storylines ready to go and, a way to sort of sustain interest in an ensemble that is like 40 people deep, like consistently.
Yes.
And you can see the show kind of be like, what should we do with some of these guys? Should we try that? Forget it. You see them kind of caught off guard, everyone caught off guard by this thing being a huge success. What the hell do we do? Not just like, let's solve the murder, but like, what should all these people do?
That's the thing. I feel like the Lynchian elements, these sort of surrealistic things, the more genre-y things loom really large in culture where I'm like, oh my God, the arm is in one episode the entire first season.
It's true.
Log Lady appears like twice in season 1. Like all this shit that has been like so outsized that I'm watching this for the first time and I'm like, there are 20 characters in this I've never heard talked about. I've never seen memed.
Wow, I want to know who your faves are.
Who are like regulars. You're like, this has such an expansive cast of like naughty soap opera relationship dynamic backstories across like quote unquote normal people. And let's say normal people on a weird sliding
100%.
scale.
Yes, the weird stuff in Twin Peaks is just a thin sliver of the running time.
And the first season has almost no scary stuff.
Correct. But
Oh,
like
but
that
it's so
shit,
scary.
it's hard to maintain
When it is scary, yeah.
that shit in a way.
Well,
The plate spinning.
You can. And so the show doesn't even try to, really.
This is when the show was about to premiere, and there was a USA Today article called High Hopes for Twin Peaks. Because you look at the press at the time, and they were like, this is a weird thing for a network to be trying.
Right.
This feels like this weird experiment, 8 episodes, short season premiering at the end of a television season. This is almost feeling like a burn-off or some weird flyer. And there's a guy, media analyst and advertising executive, Paul Schulman, who said, quote, this is right before it premieres, I don't think it has a chance of succeeding. It is not commercial. It is radically different from what we as viewers are accustomed to seeing. There's no one in the show to root for. And you're like, the guy is succinct. He is kind of correct in that based on the models of what shows had been successful up until that point, that is right. And then you put it in front of people and everyone is like, well, I've never seen something like this before. The mere fact that it was kind of brand new does feel like what grabbed people in the first place,
Here are some of the hottest shows, though, on TV.
I know the number one, which this was scheduled directly against, was Cheers, right? This is like peak of Cheers.
I would say it's kind of the end of Cheers, but like Cheers was very had a weird sort of rise near the end of its run. Like
we're gonna do ratings game at the end of this episode, obviously. Get ready.
Okay. I hope but yeah, Cosby Show, Different World, Cheers, right? That sort of NBC Thursday night lineup is huge. Wonder Years and Roseanne on Tuesdays for ABC. Those like the crown jewel of ABC's lineup. Yeah. They also, of course, have one of the top 10 shows in America, America's Funniest Home Videos.
Of course.
It is crazy to think about that being like everyone's like, time to sit down and watch that. Like that's prime time. We must see the new funniest home videos.
I mean, that's basically what MTV's 24/7 programming is now.
But that's what I'm saying. Now it's like, that's just garbage you plug holes with. Back then it was like 8 p.m.
Well, because
sit down.
There used to be one place.
Exactly.
You're like, cameras have been in homes in a widespread manner for like a decade.
Tops.
And
right.
there's this fucking oil underneath the ground that no one else is bringing up. The amount of videos that people have in their fucking cupboards
of dads getting hit in the nuts.
Correct.
Chive
and no
TV.
one gets to see them.
This toddler is coming towards this wall at an alarming rate. Like, surely not. Like, surely this kid won't run into this fence. Anyway, Golden Girls Empty Nest also crushing right now.
Okay.
Those are the biggest shows.
Is Hill Street Blues still on the air?
Yeah,
No,
are there any dramas?
Okay.
So the biggest dramas, because you're right to say, like, what the hell? I'm basically
like, which of the primetime soaps are on right now?
The biggest dramas are Murder, She Wrote. Matlock.
Mm-hmm.
The TV version of In the Heat of the Night, which is on NBC.
A lot of old people detectives.
Which was, that was right. That's Carol O'Connor post All in the Family, where they're like, I think I have another racist
post
you could
Archie's
play.
place, yeah.
LA Law, which
Okay.
that's probably the number one, like,
That's the hot.
sort of new era of television kind of thing. Of like, oh, this show is more modern, right? Like, versus a In the Heat of the Night. Then, I mean, okay, then I'm going down the list here.
But like Dallas is off the air, Dynasty's off the air. All of those have ended?
No, Dallas is still on.
Okay.
As is like Falcon Crest, but they've dropped out of the top 30 shows.
Melrose Place hasn't started yet?
Dynasty is just finished. Melrose Place has not started. 90210 has not started.
Whoa.
This is kind of a weird time, I guess.
Because that is the main thing this show is. I mean, the dynamite pitch for this show is, what if David Lynch did the weird version of a primetime soap, right?
100%.
That's enough of a proven
He'll
genre
take
at this point.
Soap aesthetics and stuff and soap storytelling styles, but then like Lynchian horror, but then also it will be a cop show.
Yes.
It's a lot of things at once. In fact, let me open the dossier.
Okay.
Between the release of Blue Velvet in 1986 and the premiere of Twin Peaks, David Lynch was involved with some other stuff that never happened.
Okay.
Something called Goddess, which is about Marilyn Monroe, which was also maybe going to be called Venus Descending.
Okay.
That was going to be about the Kennedy family. And that is where David Lynch meets Mark Frost, who had worked on Hill Street Blues.
Okay.
Frost wrote the screenplay. Lynch wants to direct it. And that is where they get together. The studio hated Mark Frost's script. David Lynch liked it. So, they click very quickly. But that thing never comes together.
It's a shame because I feel like all movies about Marilyn Monroe turn out really well.
Definitely not cursed.
Yeah. None of them are boring or upsetting.
David Lynch goes over to Dino De Laurentiis and says, do you want to make Ronnie Rocket now, please? Blue Velvet was a hit. Dino De Laurentiis says, no, I don't want to. I don't know if he talked like that.
Spinning a pizza pie on one finger as he gives a thumbs down with the other hand.
Yes. There is also something called One Saliva Bubble, which is another of his screenplays that you can find.
Yes, promised.
That emerges now. And he works on that with Mark Frost.
Okay.
That is a comedy about two cretinous guys who work at a research facility. One of them laughs and a bubble floats out of his mouth, goes down a hallway around a corner and lodges in some sensitive equipment and shorts it out. And then you cut to outer space and see a satellite deploy a ray gun weapon that fires, and then a countdown starts. That was the pitch.
Delivering exactly what it promises on the tin. It's a movie about one saliva bubble.
Steve Martin and Martin Short get attached as the two cretins.
Ben?
Sounds pretty cool.
A saliva bubble has never floated down a hallway.
Well, David Lynch disagrees with your negative thinking on storytelling here. And then Dino De Laurentiis runs out of money, and so he cannot produce it.
That's such a shame.
It sounds pretty cool.
It sounds fun.
Around now, he also makes The Cowboy and the Frenchman, which we discussed briefly, I think, on our Shorts episode, which is with Harry Dean Stanton.
Has similar vibes to Twin Peaks. Does feel like it's maybe a little bit of a transition point for him understanding how to make, I don't want to say a more mainstream version of his thing, but how to lean into the comedy a little more in a way that makes it perhaps a little more accessible.
Right.
But it's got similar look and tone to Twin Peaks, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And the other thing he does around now is he produces Floating into the Night, the Julie Cruz album, which obviously the music of that is very pivotal to Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And so that's all happening. Okay.
The reason I asked about Hill Street Blues and if it had ended, and I didn't even know that Mark Frost came from that.
He did, yeah.
But I feel like that show is often cited as this kind of breakthrough in audiences are smarter than we think they are. In like, oh, it's got very complicated narratives.
Lots of characters.
Yes, and they're threads that are going on across seasons.
More morally complex, too.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to root for a hero,
Yes,
blah,
it's a
blah,
grounded show, and it's in a genre that everyone knows very well.
It's just so weird that guy said there's no one to root for in Twin Peaks when Dale Cooper is like the person you root for.
I bet his argument is he's too weird.
Oh.
But yes, he is the guy you root for.
And then he said something Picasso. That's a very something Picasso quote.
Something Picasso.
I do love it when they God, that Picasso.
I'm sorry, did I say right here the name media analyst Cal
Hockley, Griffin. And we all know Cal Hockley committed suicide in the Great Depression.
Of course.
Which they just tag on at the end of Titanic. Just like when in Legally Blonde,
cheers.
the guy, they're like, and also her ex-boyfriend like got fired for cheating or whatever. And
Yes.
like, fuck him.
Right.
She's like, Cal Hockley killed himself anyway.
Yeah.
Tony Krantz is a hotshot agent at CIA who basically is like, David, you need to do television. Kind of weird that he thought this.
I was going to say.
I'm not sure why he thought
An
this.
insane pitch. I think most people would not think that. And if you think about his career at this point, which we've covered, right?
Yeah.
It's like midnight movie sensation.
Right.
Then he goes straight to, surprise Tony Oscar success.
Oscar tour.
Right.
Yes.
Reasonable box office performer. Then he jumps to big franchise blockbuster. It's a disaster.
Yeah.
Then like Blue Velvet is like, okay, I'm getting back to my thing. I'm synthesizing it. It's a movie that's certainly the center of a lot of conversation.
Yep.
He gets one lone Oscar nomination for director.
He does.
But it's a movie that gets a lot of controversy. It does well considering what it is, but it's not like a huge crossover success. The guy's certainly a subject of conversation, has defined himself as an artist, but it does feel like an odd moment to be like, obviously we should do this in a weekly format.
He just hears, I hear you're working with Mark Frost. That guy's a TV writer. Do you want to do television? Does that sound interesting at all? They initially have an idea for a TV show called The Lemurians about the continent of Lemuria, a place where evil prevails, which disappears into the ocean, and FBI agents with Geiger counters search out to kill the remaining Lemurians. What the fuck is that?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
They pitched that to NBC, and NBC is like, no. And then Branda Tartikoff at NBC is like, I mean, do you want to make that into a movie? And they're like, no. So then instead, Krantz says to Lynch, can you write something about the real America like you did with Blue Velvet?
Uh-huh.
Supposedly, they maybe also they were somewhat inspired by Peyton Place, the classic film and soap television show. Right. And they wisely were like, what if we did like a cop show crossed with a soap opera? It's just funny. They're like, their first pitch is like, okay, aliens from the sea. And ABC's like, no. And they're like, oh, cop show? But like with soapy elements? And ABC is like, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
It was going to be called Northwest Passage. It was going to be set in North Dakota. And they developed the town. They drew this map. They were like, it's going to have a lumber mill. There's going to be a lake. A body will wash up on the lake. Like they thought about this sort of Dickensian setting first, and then they populated with the characters and the stories. And they pitch ABC on like the mystery of Laura Palmer. That will be the foreground, but then it will recede and we'll have the soapy character stuff. And ABC was just kind of like, all right. I mean, truly, I think they were like, we'll order a pilot, like something. They pitched it in '88. There was an '88 WGA strike. And it took them like almost a year for ABC to finally be like, go make it.
Wow.
Yeah. And they would make it together. Griffin, you're looking something up?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I can
No,
tell you some...
I have the thing I was looking
Okay.
up. And this is from IMDb Trivia, so likely is false.
Great.
But it jumped out to me.
Okay.
The population in Twin Peaks was originally only supposed to be 5,120.
Yes.
However, there was a backlash against rural-themed shows at the time.
This is a classic bit of Twin Peaks lore. I have no idea if it's real or not.
As networks were fearful that the burgeoning urban and suburban population of America would not be able to sympathize with shows set in small farming or industrial towns. So then it was bumped up to whatever it is, 51,000.
They added a 1.
Right. And Mark Frost's internal lore has always been, that's a typo.
Yes, it's a typo. It's a 5,000 person
But it is funny to think about, like all the other sort of
you're citing something that is maybe not real.
I framed it that way on purpose.
Well, okay.
Just thinking like, what are the other 40,000 people up to in Twin
Yes,
Peaks? Like,
who
where
are
do they
not saying.
live? Like, what apartment complexes do they live in?
There is a reason I'm bringing this up, whether or not it's real, which is all those other nighttime soaps we're talking about are very like lifestyles of the rich and famous,
Yes.
fabulous.
Dallas Dynasty, Peyton Place, sure. I
Right.
mean, whatever. Yeah.
Whether or not there was truly fear at ABC around this, I do think that was like a key to this show working, is like this is in a different milieu. These are like just real people.
I think the small town thing is obviously so pivotal to
Huge.
success. The people seek the vibes.
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense that the sign says 50,000 people live there.
That's why I'm bringing it up.
Which is why it's always driven people crazy.
Yes.
And clearly 50,000 people don't live there.
Yes.
I've never understood, like, and then there are people who, like, I've read the note of, like, ABC was afraid of the thing you just said.
Sure.
That seems insane. I get the smaller thing of ABC being like, that's kind of tiny. Like,
Yeah.
the more just literal, like, vibes of, like, will anyone fucking care?
Sure.
Can you make it just feel a little bigger?
Yeah. But also, you're
it's
saying-
so annoying that the population is just wrong.
Yes.
It just drives me crazy.
I could also see the like Mark Frost or David Lynch isn't on set the day that they shoot the shot of the art department made the sign wrong.
I
Yeah.
mean,
They just-
sure.
Yeah, it comes in. They're like, oh, can we shoot this? No, I guess
How
we
many
can't shoot it
people?
again.
Let's find out. How many people live in Fall City, Washington?
Yeah.
Let's find out.
Yeah,
But it also feels
2,000.
you're saying it's insane
2,000 people.
insane thinking to say, well, people won't want to watch a show about a small town. That's the
Yeah.
exact kind of insane that you hear from television executives all the time.
Sure.
And it does feel like, despite the fact that it then becomes immortalized because it's in the fucking opening credits, that is the kind of like, how do we take this note without really taking it? If we change the number on the sign, we don't have to change the feel of the town at all.
I'm going back to the dossier.
Do it.
The research dossier.
Sure.
So Cooper, as you might understand, as you might guess,
Mhm.
that is David Lynch's avatar.
Wait, what?
I know this sounds crazy. Mark Frost, apparently, more the snappy dialogue guy, Lynch
Okay.
says. From everything I've ever understood about this show, Frost is more the TV writer mind, obviously. He's a little more responsible for thinking about how the show moves week to week, how the mysteries progress. Lynch is more responsible for the look of the show, the aesthetics, obviously the Red Room and everything
tone.
like that. The tone, the music, sure. But Dale is Lynch.
Yeah.
So like a lot of the Dale stuff is being driven by Lynch. But they do write the pilot together. There's a lot of like sort of Twin Peaks speculation about like whose is what, right? You know
Yes.
what I mean? Like that's sort of hard for people to figure out.
Sure.
Some things I think are obvious, like what I'm talking about. Some things it's like, no, actually that was Mark's idea. Blah blah blah.
Also,
Who
any
knows?
successful.
But they say they write together, and it's
Right.
kind
I
of
was
like a
gonna say,
mind meld.
any successful partnership like this, at some point, it becomes more symbiotic than you would imagine, even if the starting point is like Lynch does the weird shit, Frost does the structure.
Right.
At some point, they're going to get good at understanding both sides of it.
Lynch is a treat boy.
Lynch is a
Please
treat
elaborate on
boy.
that. I love it.
I mean, didn't he famously work at Bob's Big Boy and drink milkshakes all the
live
time?
there.
Yeah.
Or like
Yes.
ate all his
He went there
meals
every day for
Right.
5 years?
Yes.
He's a treat boy.
Yes. He just wants to do the fun
How
stuff.
does he stay trim?
It's incredible.
I don't know.
I was watching forgive me for bringing his name to this conversation, Charlie Rose clip with David Lynch.
That's not so bad.
He said,
Wait, are you watching, you mean the clip where he says he eats tuna fish every day?
Yes. Where he talks about his meals.
Yeah. So, I mean, the man has a fixation thing, like
Here's
no matter what the
here's
meal
the thing
is.
that sucks about Charlie Rose.
He gets good answers out of people despite not being good at his job.
He's the world's worst interviewer. He's actually maybe the worst interviewer that has ever existed.
What are you talking about?
But for 30 years, he basically was the only person hosting a podcast.
Yeah.
Right? Where he had a format that was loose and conversational enough and open-ended
There's
enough.
actually time for people to talk. They can give a complete answers.
And he's got this minimalist set, and he booked good guests, and you're just like, oh, fuck, you constantly got to go back and watch Charlie Rose interviews and watch this dumb drunk go like, so Twin Peaks is a movie? And he's like, no, it's a TV series.
And television is what now? What is it? I'm on it right now?
Is that the box I put my beer inside? My groceries?
Didn't he had that thing recently where he talked about eating Cheetos?
Charlie Rose recently talked about
Lynch.
eating cheese? Oh, okay.
Lynch said that when he was asked to play John Ford in Fabelmans, that the one thing in his contract was that his dressing room was filled with Cheetos, with bags of Cheetos.
He's only allowed to eat them on set.
Right. Or I think
he was. He's a treat boy. He's like, I'm going to get my treats.
I think one of the producers said that about him, and then he was asked about it in an interview, and they were like, do you love Cheetos that much? And he's like, I have to put guardrails around it. If I eat one, I'm going to eat the whole bag.
This is how he stays trim.
Right. Just thinking about him sucking his fingers.
Well, that's like with Lynch. You don't like to think about him like getting on the scale and going like, oh, I should lose 5 pounds. Like that's just not how he operates in my mind.
But the whole eating routine thing, and in that Charlie Rose interview, he's like, I eat 2 things every day. I have like tuna fish with lemon and then chicken chopped into little pieces with a tiny bit of soy sauce.
Yeah, let me find the tuna fish. We've talked about this, I think. But
and his explanation is like, because everyone was always like, what's this eccentricity? What's him only eating at Bob's Big Boys for 5 years? And his explanation in that Rose clip,
feta cheese, olive oil, vinegar, tomatoes, and tuna fish. It's sort of like a niçoise salad.
That's lunch every day.
He's a Mediterranean diet boy.
Yes. And he was saying he cycles through what it is, but he'll go through a prolonged period where it's I eat the same thing every day unless I'm traveling.
Right. And then he gets to
then I'm a treat boy. Right. Then I have bags of Cheetos or whatever.
Or
he said,
pie.
The routine is important because limiting the decision-making process in as many aspects of my life as possible allows me to spend the rest of my day in imagination land, basically. He was like, I wear the same thing, I eat the same thing, I do everything at the same time because that structure keeps my life on rails. And then I feel like when those decisions are removed, your brain starts going to weirder places.
I love that.
Which does feel like, watching that clip kind of feels like a turnkey to the Cooper character.
Very much. Absolutely.
In his setup and the whole
That's where the
unconventional
overlap.
Detective thing.
Yes.
Right.
Except Cooper eats anything you put in front of him.
Correct.
It's true. He's a bit of a Griffin Newman.
Yes.
Garbage belly.
But garbage belly. That idea of like, I'm going to have a weird approach to finding the clues.
Yeah.
Right.
Kyle MacLachlan is the only choice, obviously, for Dale Cooper. Lynch says, yes, exactly. This guy says he was born for the role. He says he's got a lot of perky childlike faces that really fit in. He says he loves gadgets, like that Kyle would always have like little gadgets, little like Swiss Army knives and lighters and stuff. And he just felt like all of that was very Dale Cooper.
He's so fucking boyish in Dune and Blue Velvet. And in this, he's like gotten like 10% more grown-up man in him.
I was thinking about this. It was like, they finally like grew together into a character.
Yes.
Like Lynch and because there's something he's not very good in Dune, even though I love him so much. And then in Blue Velvet, he's just not my favorite part of Blue Velvet.
Sure.
But then it's just like it all comes together in Agent Cooper. It all makes sense suddenly.
Lynch also sort of says, without being critical, that he thinks that when he was directing Kyle, he really could get him to kick up the Cooper way up.
Sure.
And other directors were afraid to do that, and Kyle would maybe bring it down slightly. And Lynch likes, really goofy Dale Cooper.
But don't you think part of the magic of this show is like the weird erratic, like sometimes he's huge and sometimes he's more muted?
Honestly, I do. That's a good point. Yes. I mean, if he were a cartoon character the entire time, but like, the magic of the show, I'll do a little more dicey, but is that Dale is like, I had a dream and we simply have to go do this right now. And Truman is just like, Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Like, it's not like what any TV executive would be like, where's the conflict? Why does Truman go along with everything Cooper says? Cooper's insane.
Right.
And so annoying. And he's a city slicker. And he's a Fed. And instead, Sheriff Truman's just always like, yeah, he had a dream. Well, I mean, it's a pretty weird town, so I guess we'll do that.
When people discuss like buddy cop as a subgenre,
Right.
almost all examples are they hate each other and they're
For
fighting
the first
the whole
act,
time.
at least. First act hate each other. Second act, they realize common ground. Third act, they're together.
The 4 Lethal
Right.
Weapon movies were obviously the
They
underlying
hate each
idea.
other the whole time.
That's what I was gonna
Yes,
say.
You're right.
Right. And this is actually a buddy cop thing where the one cop is like, sure thing, whatever you say, buddy.
Put on a disguise, go to a brothel. Yeah,
I
sure.
think
Great
in
plan.
the entire series, there is one time that Truman is kind of like, Cooper. It basically never happens.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll talk about it.
Sure.
Joanna Ray, his legendary casting director, obviously loves to present Lynch with photographs. Lynch loves to look at photos. He finds a photo of Cheryl Lee, a Seattle-based actress.
Yes.
Obviously, Laura is not really intended as a big character, but he's very drawn
It was
to
truly
her.
a she has the right look thing. And
Right.
then it was,
He meets with her. She says she was so nervous, and he was like, how do you feel about being dipped in gray paint and wrapped in plastic? And she was like, okay. And then they film the home video sequence, and he realizes, like, I need
there's
more
a real
of this
actor here. Yeah.
So he didn't plan for Maddie originally?
no,
Oh, that's so cool.
So Lynch brings her back, obviously, right. First is Maddie, and occasionally Laura,
And then
dream
builds a whole
sequences,
movie
and then,
around her.
Right,
Yeah.
plans the movie around her.
But that's all him discovering, like,
That's so cool.
right. I mean, she's like the one local hire
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
becomes a significant role because it was like, we don't need to cast a real actor for this. This is like
I mean,
2
it's-
shots. She's not speaking, whatever.
Weird
it's
to have
like-
a meeting about that. You're a corpse. She's like,
Yeah. No, you're
But
right.
she is pivotal. I mean,
She
sure.
is,
Yeah.
he wanted an excuse to go get a treat.
I think
It does
so.
sound like David Lynch
A
loves to
treat
have
meeting.
a treat.
Weird. The meeting was at Bob's Big One. But yeah, you think like on paper, it's like she's still photo from like her yearbook photo
Mm-hmm.
and a film shot of her playing dead.
Right. But it's like, it's like Juliana Margulies in ER or whatever. It's like once they start working, they're like, you're good. We need more of you.
Yeah.
Juliana Margulies, of course, was supposed to die in the first episode of ER.
Wow.
So apart from that, though, you've got a lot of, I feel like, sort of vets and young ingenues, right? Like that's the
Yes.
casting, right? You've got your like Ray Wise, the 2 West Side Story boys,
Jack Nance.
Jack Nance, Grace Zabriskie, but then of course you also have like Machinomic, Lara Flynn Boyle,
Right.
Peggy Lipton is over in the vet side,
Right.
but like
And then
Piper
there's like
Laurie,
a
Joan
subset
Chen.
of the vets, which are Lynch's old friends, who
Right.
he got fucking regular work on network television.
It's the most amazing
His like
cast.
art school buddies.
So good.
Which I forget what episode I said this in. It's probably one that's going to come out 5 months from now. But like there is, I think, a fascinating underdiscussed aspect of Lynch, which is he places very different type of actors in the same project,
Right.
in the same scenes.
Sure.
Mhm.
That like when people talk about the uncanny Lynch tone, I think part of it is that like he's not looking to synthesize people onto the same wavelength. He will have people who are like ostensibly non-professional actors who just have the vibe or the look he wants.
Right.
He will have people who are like very serious young actors. He will have people from old Hollywood
which
school
he loves
in a
right.
weird heightened style. And like he likes the sort of conflict between these people not really feeling like they're talking to each other. They shouldn't be in the same frame.
I love that.
I mean, it's wild to think about, especially now when all television makers are so spendthrift and like want to reduce the number of regular cast members, and people who are on every episode are technically like guest stars or whatever. And this show starts and you're like, are there 30 regulars
Pretty
on this?
much.
2
opening-
minutes of credits.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then the actors' names keep going once
Yeah.
the show starts.
right.
Josie Packard, written for Isabella Rossellini, legendarily. She
Oh.
passes.
Okay.
Maybe because she's sort of at the end of her rope with Lynch. I don't really know. And so they refigure that for Joan Chen, who'd just been in The Last Emperor and is kind of like a similar kind of like out of towner,
Yeah.
right? Energy, even though she's a very different actor. Russ Tamblyn, he met at a party with Dennis Hopper through. Cool. Richard Bamer talks about like he was a friend of Joanna Ray's, and Lynch would do things like, you should dance in the next take. And Bamer would be like, I'm talking about like this deadly serious murder. He's like, it'll be great. Like, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Catherine Coulson, right? We know had worked with him on a short film like
Yes.
years ago.
And was married to Jack Nance. And is
Yes.
someone he's known for decades at this point. Yeah.
There's so many. It's hard to get through all of this casting. Like it's, but like guys like Michael Onkeen was like a guy, right? Like
Right.
he's in like a bunch of, he's in Clara's Heart and like Postcards from the Edge and stuff. Like he's like a guy.
Yeah.
I think he had a TV show, The Rookies.
Okay.
Whatever. But then you also have like Mark Frost's dad,
Right.
the great Warren Frost.
Yes.
You have, I mean, who else? Piper
Well, like-
Laurie. She's a fucking Oscar winner.
right.
or
Yeah, she got nominated
nominee.
for an Emmy, right?
She got nominated for lead actress on this, I think largely
first-
because she was
'cause
kind
she
of
was
legendary.
famous, yeah.
Right.
She's so good in this.
She's
She
so
does
good.
rock. We'll just get ready for her season 2, Griff.
Okay. What I was gonna say is
Mm-hmm.
you've been prepping, you've been making jokes all season about like the insanity of Twin Peaks being so much based around high school drama and it all being these people in their mid-20s who don't even he doesn't even make the effort to like show them in school.
There's
really
like a
treat
couple.
them as
I mean, there's the
teenagers.
iconic shot of Lara Flynn Boyle sobbing in school, but
Yes.
you so rarely see them at school.
Correct.
And also Audrey leaning against her locker.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
right at the start.
We'll
they
get
did
into all of that. And Eva has a very strong take that she wants to share that she's been
it. It was a real go on.
laying track for over text. But I read that Machen Amchek, I'm saying her
Machen
name.
Amick.
Machen Amick originally read for Donna.
Makes sense. Sure.
And then they
right.
cast Lara Flynn Boyle, but you're like, you're so good, we're going to write a part for you. And then the part is like, quote unquote, adult woman.
It's true, right? She's in the same pot as
That's
the other
what's
young
so
ingenues,
funny
but
is
she's
that
not in school.
Right. There's this central tension around like, oh my God, Bobby's having an affair with an older woman.
Right.
And you're like, everyone's the same age. And Audrey, you're like, is this creepy that she's like flirting with Cooper?
Right.
But then Amek's playing an older
I mean,
woman.
not to spoil, but Audrey, of course, is intended as Dale's love interest,
Yes.
and then he objects, or
Lara
Flynn
Flynn
Boyle
Perhaps his
objects.
girlfriend.
Yes,
Yeah.
someone objects. That gets written out, and then they cast Heather Graham as his love interest in season 2, who is younger
Right.
than Sherilyn Fenn.
Sure.
Not younger than the character Audrey,
Right.
but like it does anyway. The TV in the 90s, man. I mean, the 90210. I mean, there were no
totally.
teenagers, right?
No,
like
they
all the teenagers
feel
were played by
like
these
kabuki
25-year-olds.
teenagers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they're
Um,
50s teenagers too.
Yes,
I
that's
think
a
that's
huge
part
point.
of it.
They're
Right.
like Blackboard Jungle teenagers.
They're
Yes.
West Side Story teenagers.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Which is part of, right, the charm of Twin Peaks is that there are bad boys, but
Yes.
they feel like 50s bad boys. But then you're like, oh, what do they do? And they're like, prostitution and cocaine dealing.
Right.
And you're like, oh, well, that's distressing.
Do
and
you
they're like,
think-
well, yeah.
Do you think that when Sherilyn Fenn walked in for her audition, Lynch literally fell out of his chair?
Just like burst into flames.
But like what we're talking
She's
about,
the most like Lynchy lady imaginable.
she also
sure.
just looks somehow exactly like the 90s version of a 50s
Yes.
teenager. She's
It's
both at the
crazy.
same time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They filmed the show for the pilot for $4 million.
Mhm.
They had a great time. 21 days of shooting.
1 week per episode. Like it's crazy that they got this done. Yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised if to read that this show was a weird example of him fighting for more days to be able to pull off what he wanted. It's like, no, they basically worked on regular TV turnaround for
Yeah.
that point.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
The contracts it required an alternate ending for the pilot, so it could be distributed as a film in Europe.
Mhm.
They had no ideas.
Mhm.
Lynch famously meets set dresser Frank Silva,
Mhm.
and you know, I mean, there's just this iconic story of like they're dressing Laura Palmer's bedroom. Frank's in there doing his thing. He's moving furnitures around.
Mhm.
He moves a chest of drawers. It's in the doorway. And someone says, Frank, don't lock yourself in the room. And Lynch is like, Frank, are you an actor? And he's like, sure. And he's like, do you want to be in it? Like he just sees him over in the corner and is like, ooh. And you know, Bob is born.
Wow.
And they have him sign a big contract basically, and they just start shooting footage of him, and
Isn't there
here
a
we
thing
go.
too where like they realized that he was being caught in the reflection
Yes.
Ugh.
of Laura Palmer's eye when they discovered the body?
No, they were shooting a pan in the room.
Yes.
And I guess he's in there, and Lynch has the idea of like, you know, crouch next to the bed.
Right.
Behind the bars.
Right.
Everyone can read
Because even
this.
at the point where
This is so, you know, crucial to the lore of Twin
even at the
Peaks.
point where he decides we're going to make you an on-camera character, the guy's still doing double duty as like
Right.
Yeah, they didn't replace the set
a
deck.
set guy, and sometimes he'd be setting up shit, and they'd be like, "No, actually, it helps
Yes.
if you're on camera at this part."
They shoot basically a shot of her room, and they're like, "We fucked it up, Frank. You can see Frank in the mirror."
Yes.
And David's like, "No, that's good." And Frank Silva, who by all accounts was a nice guy, becomes the personification of the depths of human depravity as Bob, just looking like that.
Becomes like the
guy with
evil
this kind
male
of scraggly hair,
Yes.
and a jean jacket, and it's just that's Bob.
He does a great job for a
He
non-actor,
does.
man.
He died of HIV complications
Not
right after this ended, basically.
Oh man.
Like right after Fire Walk With Me, I want to say.
Yes, in the mid 90s. I can look up the exact date.
Like he had the exact arc of this show and then basically died tragically.
100%. Died in 95.
Yeah.
He is very present in The Return, but obviously just as a image. That's a thing. And then The Red Room, Mike Anderson was a guy, Michael J. Anderson, who plays the man from another place, was supposed to be in Ronnie Rocket, maybe. So Lynch had met him and had done some stuff with him, like camera tests or whatever. And as the way Lynch puts it, like one night in the evening, he's out in a parking lot leaning against the car, and the metal was very hot, and the Red Room scene leapt into his mind, and little Mike was there, and he was speaking backwards. Which is
something that Anderson said he used to do as a child, that he taught himself how to do as like his version of Pig Latin. Right.
Cool.
I mean, I feel like this is the fundamental mythos of Twin Peaks, is this sort of David Lynch's description of accidental storytelling, and these beautiful images we think of. It's like, it came to me when I touched a hot car,
but not
right?
To be reductive,
whatever.
Isn't this sort of like what the Red Room represents? Like not within the narrative of the show, right? Hot car, but especially like looking at Cooper as an analog for Lynch, right? And his approach to mystery solving being an analog to like Lynch's creative process. That the Red Room is like entering some flow state where there are like no bad ideas. Right?
Yeah.
Where you're sort of just like opening your brain up to, am I touching the bad things? Am I finding the miracles?
Sure.
Wait, am I missing something? Is the man from another world Mike's arm?
Yes.
I didn't know.
You need to start to really care about Twin Peaks to unpack all this stuff. Like, you can just watch Twin Peaks and have a good time and vibe with it. You can also put together all of its logic. It's pretty much there for you to assemble if you want to be a dork about it. You just don't have to be.
I will be upfront and say, I basically watched it this time the way you're saying the first way, because 100%. I felt like trying to come in and be like fucking deep end expert.
I just didn't know he was the cut off arm.
I am like excited to watch this 18 more times across the rest of my life.
Mike says that he cut off his arm, to become good. And again, we're leaping ahead here. And yes, the man from another place, I can't remember when, it might be in Fire Walk With Me, says like, I am the arm,
Okay.
And it's not important. Like, and it's also, it's like, that's not like, this is what I love about Twin Peaks. That doesn't make any sense.
No.
It's not like knowing that you're like, well, of course he was his arm. Arm is where evil is stored in the body. It's like it's not like that solves the question
isn't
for
the whole one-arm man thing that like Frost and Lynch used The Fugitive as a big touch point in developing this show?
Frost and Lynch know what they're doing, right? You take things that people recognize, but then you also add in surreal logic.
Well, he said, and this is the thing that sort of starts to doom the show, is he's like, our plan was always The Fugitive, you're so fascinated by this guy's ongoing journey in the sense of this larger narrative, and hanging over it is this thing of like, he's got to find the one-armed man, he's got to find the man who killed his wife, he's got to absolve himself and his reputation. But you never actually really make any progress on that. That's not really what it's about. It's kind of the MacGuffin that keeps him moving on to the new things. And that was their thing of like, maybe we just never solved the Laura Palmer thing. We know what the answer is, but that's not really the point. That's the entry point into these characters. So they put a one-armed man in this as an homage. And then similarly, he shows up on set and Lynch is like, you're a good actor. Plot line. Like, I think he was not really supposed to do anything.
And I sound like this.
Yes.
Mike is great.
So great.
Mike Anderson?
Yeah.
Mike
the one-armed
he
man.
rocks.
His monologue is incredible.
Like,
Al
Eva,
Strobel.
You are a professional television writer. You have been in many rooms.
Yes.
I've been in much, much lower stakes versions of these types of things. But there is this feeling, especially when you're on set, when you're gestating ideas, where someone has an idea that's really exciting and everyone riffs on it for like 20 minutes and there's like energy in the room. And then someone says, I mean, we obviously can't use that.
Right.
Right. That's too interesting.
Right. You're all laughing at this joke idea, and it's like, but that's like too silly. We can't do that.
You're right.
And it's so frustrating. And Lynch feels like a guy where he's just like, I'm not accepting we shouldn't do that, or we obviously can't do that.
This is like when I was working on Comedy Bang Bang, and we had a non-speaking Jack Nicholson impersonator in a scene.
Yeah.
And he kept saying into my ear, because I was sitting next to him as an extra, "This is as good as it gets." And I finally just like walked over to Scott Aukerman.
Yeah.
I was like, "Hey, Scott, this guy keeps saying this is as good as it gets." And then they just were like, "Okay, let's get him like a little contract."
Right.
So we can say
He's going to talk now. We got to pay him more.
Right. I mean, Comedy Bang Bang actually feels like the perfect show for like, there's nothing you actually can't do. It's a show that basically perpetually takes place in a silly red room.
Exactly.
100%. Right. Yeah, the best kind of show.
He never said, he does, that's not the line too. It made me so happy.
Right. No one in As Good as It Gets is like,
says,
wow, this is as good as it gets.
Yeah, he says, what if this is as good as it gets?
It's not a movie about how life
He's
is
saying
great.
the opposite.
Yeah. He made up a Nicholson line, and he was just like, this is as good as it gets.
Right.
Yeah.
It is.
Anyway,
it's
that's
like,
what it
wow,
feels.
this feels like my last detail.
Yeah.
David Lynch, and I just like this quote. Angelo Badalamenti.
Yeah.
Angelo Badalamenti. That's the theme song. Lynch's direction to him.
Mhm.
The music should start dark and slow. Imagine you're alone in the woods at night and you only hear the sound of wind and possibly the soft cry of an animal. And then he'd start playing and David would say, "Good, now get ready for a change because you see a beautiful girl. She's coming out from behind a tree and she's alone and in trouble. So go to a beautiful melody and then reach a climax and let it tear your heart out." And that is the theme song of, the theme music of Twin Peaks.
It's so bizarre because obviously like all his musical pieces go through like movements and waves, but you take any one of those pieces and at any single moment it is simultaneously like serene.
Yes.
It feels like it could be playing under an ASMR video.
Pure moods.
Right. Like hugely romantic, sweeping, old-fashioned drama and like deeply unsettling.
Yeah.
Like he's somehow hitting all three notes simultaneously at every second.
That is the magic of it all.
And you think about audiences locking into this show, just the mission statement of the opening of just like, here's like pure moods over like serene footage of fucking
Waterfall.
lumber mills and like the fact that the saw is so early on in the intro and does feel like this relaxing element somehow just kind of completely calibrates you to the tone of what the show is.
I think if you watch Twin Peaks and you skip the intro, which these terrible services let you do now, it's like running without warming up or whatever.
Right.
Like you're going to pull a muscle.
Yes.
You need to slide.
It tells you how to watch it.
Bob Iger had just taken over ABC. Now he does some other thing. I don't know what he does right now.
Masterclass on leadership.
That's right. He does master classes on leadership. He pretends to run for president.
Yeah.
So he hadn't ordered this pilot. It's presented to him, and he liked the pilot. ABC is like, we can't put this on air. This is basically pornographic.
Yeah.
Not pornographic in terms of sex, just like, this is too bizarre. Like, this will not vibe with whatever they had on air.
People will storm our offices with pitchforks and torches.
Iger has a gigantic fight with a room of New York executives. He wins, and the show is ordered as a mid-season show, 8 episodes, obviously. And as I think any Twin Peaks diehard will tell you, the first season of the show was written in advance.
Sure.
Was filmed with full, complete scripts. And that does speak to the experience of watching it versus season 2, where it's a more traditional TV show where they're not written all the way through, obviously. And they're trying to anticipate stuff.
The idea of, okay, season 1 was a success. What we should do is give Lynch and Frost another year to come up with 8 jewel-cut episodes, which would have been the right decision, is something they probably could not even conceptualize at that point in time. It would not have made sense for anyone to say, let's do less of a hit show, even if creatively it's a bad idea.
But also the idea of like having a writer's room that they're not in because they're on set, like doing Twin Peaks, that makes me sick to my stomach.
It's so weird.
You cannot do that.
I was just digging into a little bit. I mean, we'll talk about it all in the season 2 episode. But like, there are all these contrasting reports of like, at no point was ever anyone else really named the showrunner.
That's a huge problem the show has in season 2. There's no real showrunner. Lynch is not writing much anymore.
Right.
Frost is even kind of taking a step back,
All
and
the
no one's
cast-
really filling it in.
Right, where like sometimes David was around and Frost was really gone, but he was never as around as he was in season 1. Sometimes Frost was around, but Lynch was gone. Sometimes it was neither.
The myth that needs to be dispelled, I think, for a lot of people sometimes is that Lynch was doing Wild at Heart during season 1.
No.
A lot of people think he departed for season 2. He's in season 2.
Yes.
Like he has a role in it.
Right.
Like
he starts
he's
Wild at
more
Heart,
present.
like right after season 1
I'll
wraps.
give you the exact thing.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, right after he does the pilot. Right?
Lynch shoots the pilot and the 3rd episode, which is a very crucial episode, Xander, The Skill to Catch a Killer. Then he goes off to do Wild at Heart. And he says when he came back, he says, I don't really know what was going on with the show. It felt like a runaway train. I think if it had been me and Mark writing together in every episode, we would have been okay. But that was basically impossible, right? You know, because it's too much. And so at that point, there's a writer's room and they have kind of like guidelines.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
They made
Like kind of like these kinds of things should happen. These kinds of things shouldn't happen. These kinds of stories we should be moving towards them. But like, as you will especially see in season 2, there are some storylines that are so fucking bananas that you're just like, where did this come from? And was this one line that someone said like, hey, I think they should do like a Civil War reenactment plot.
Sure.
And the guy's like, what? Okay. Like, I don't know how some of this stuff made it all the way to the finish line.
Eva, have you ever...
Not that I dislike.
I was going to say, I wanted him to say, like, they had a writer's room. They were shooting little basketballs. They had
It's so weird to think about just a normally staffed writer's room
just
trying to...
Just LaCroix.
Nerf guns.
I
What
feel
were you
like
going to ask?
most of the narrative shows you've worked on, you've been there from the start of the show. Have you ever joined a show on like a 2nd or 3rd season?
Ooh, yes, but not ones that went. Like, I was on the 2nd season of Why the Last Man, but then that got canceled a few weeks in.
Yes.
So rude.
It's a great time for television.
It is. It's fun for that. But yeah, no, I usually start, Comedy Bang Bang as well. I was in the 1st season. But narrative shows, yes, I've usually started the show.
It just always feels like such a weird thing to me. And I know tons of people who have done it. And no one is like, this is insane. But the idea of like joining a show that is already off and running, that you have seen, that you have watched.
Yeah.
And now it's like, now everything you're writing up for a thing that you're entering midstream is canon, does count, is real.
Right. You're actually, the fan fiction is no longer fan fiction.
Right.
Say.
That on top of the like new kid in class energy of like, oh, most of you have already been working together and I'm just coming in here and every idea I have is supposed to be as valid as yours. Like, it just feels so strange to have a show that's so much about these two guys' dynamics. And then in season 2 be like, can we just hire 10 people?
The answer is no.
Right.
It's like, but also the idea of when I think about those jobs a lot, if you're starting really late, like multiple seasons in, how do you not just pitch things that be like, we already talked about that. We did that. We tried that. It doesn't work. Like forever.
That part of it.
That would be so, I'd be so scared.
Like thinking about people coming in and writing for The Simpsons now.
I know.
And it's like, how do you pitch an idea?
That's a great question.
And we know people who have that job.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it just like boggles my mind to be like, right.
Yeah.
No. I assume a show like that, it's kind of like, okay, buddy, welcome to The Simpsons. Here's how this works. And you take it easy for a sec while you learn the right, because they must have such practices embedded in like the process, right?
Yes.
Like, or like a proceed like a Law and Order type show, right? Where it's like, okay, we do this, we do this, we do this. Like,
but this is not an easy show to synthesize. And if you're trying to game it out from a distance, you're going to get it wrong because it is so much just about these two dudes.
But season 1 is very much not that. They have Harley Payton and Robert Engels, who write a couple episodes with them. But, you know, it's a much more contained process. Did you enjoy it? What'd you think, Griff?
I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that as I'm watching season 2 right now, I feel myself getting even more into it.
Into one?
Well, you love the characters at this point, you know,
And I'm like coming up on the reveal episode, which I know what the reveal is. And I know everyone's prepped me for like, this is about to fall off a cliff.
It's such a good episode.
I have
The reveal
friends
episode's
who
very
defend the back half of season 2 more. I do know opinions in that vein, but I don't know. It's like, it's hard to, I don't know if you felt this watching this, you know, slightly later in your life, but it's like weird to watch it fresh when you've had the sort of like pre-digested
Yeah.
ephemera of the show around you for so long. And it's not just like, oh, when I was like 20 and I started watching Cheers for the first time. And I'm like, I know all these reference points. I know the basics of what Cheers is, but it's not like there's a dense mythology to it and there's 11 seasons of a show. And I'm like, these 8 episodes have been like so lionized in the culture that it's weird to actually just watch it and like put all that inside and engage with what it actually is. Because as we said, there's so much less weird stuff or the real out there stuff in the first season than there is in the sort
There's just a sprinkling.
Just a sprinkling.
It's true. It is very much about the town and the people who live in it. Like, and the weird stuff is basically a couple glimpses of the Black Lodge / Red Room, some visions, some kind of spooky visions.
And there's weird comedy. There's the sort of energy you wouldn't expect on a show like
So
this.
fun. Like this time I was just like, Nadine is so funny.
Yes.
Like all the
Nadine's
Big
so
Ed and
funny.
Nadine scenes, they're just, I'm like, this is a funny lady.
I sent you guys the SNL parody.
Yeah.
That was like pretty famous. And you think about what interesting point in the culture where basically the idea of SNL getting to parody X,
Yeah.
whatever it is, felt like finally someone's going to take this down, right? Like you're tuning into SNL. The season premiere for season 15 is Kyle MacLachlan hosting right as season 2 of Twin Peaks is about to start. He's responding to the cultural tidal wave that these first 8 episodes had created just a few months earlier.
Yes.
It's almost like the speed at which Roger Jean Page hosts SNL after Bridgerton blows up on Netflix.
right.
Usually, it's not that fast for someone to get put up onto the SNL stage, right? And you feel the energy from the audience during that Twin Peaks sketch of like, here we go. There's no Twitter.
Yeah.
There's no fucking college humor shorts. No one's been able to make fun of this thing yet, right? And they're trying to hit like all the points on it. And at the end of the sketch, Mike Myers comes on as Michael J. Anderson. And the audience is like, here we go. Finally, someone's acknowledging that this thing was fucking weird. And it's so weird to watch that and be like, he was on the show for 4 minutes at that point.
yeah.
Right. But, and kind of, I mean, I'm sure there had been like reruns or whatever, but like, it's like,
I think they
watching the show
yes.
must have kind of been like afterwards, you're like, did I imagine
Totally.
like this part? Like,
That's the
what was
weirdest
that
thing
about?
to think about. I mean, on the Blu-ray box set, they had like TV bumpers for like watch Twin Peaks again from the beginning that I think was running that summer.
Right.
Like they gave people a second
that
on
makes
ramp.
sense. It's only 8 episodes.
Yes.
Right.
But both of that episode, I watched the monologue and I watched the Twin Peaks parody. And both of them are really built around jokes of here's the answer to who killed Laura Palmer.
Who shot Mr. Burns?
Right. Like
Yeah.
everyone's on edge about this.
Did you see like TV Guide had a poll
Yeah.
where people were voting on who they thought did it?
Who are the options?
It was everyone, but like everyone thought Dr. Jacoby did it.
Well, he is the
he-
most
yes.
sort of loud red
Suspicious.
herring.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sort of guys. We're not going to spoil season 2 or whatever, but like,
Also,
I guess
it
we'll
was
try to
spoiled
avoid
for me
it.
years before I watched it. I think it's kind of hard to be a person engaged in the media and not know the answer
Sure.
because so much of the discourse around what went off the rails talks about that episode and what happened
Then
afterwards.
do you know who killed Laura Palmer?
I do.
We won't say it here.
That's after the reveal, the next episode.
That's when you stop.
That's when I stop.
I think a lot of people in our generation who were catching up with Twin Peaks just kind of naturally knew, well, this seems like a good place than any to kind of wind this down. I got other stuff to do.
Well, also, I think 2001, they released the first season on DVD.
Yeah.
And then they never put out season 2.
Oh, wow.
It took many years.
Yeah, eventually there's the full
And
box
then they
set or
did the gold
whatever.
box set. But there
Yeah.
was like an extended period where you could only watch season 1,
Interesting. I
where
wonder-
season 2 was even out of circulation.
Do you just want to say? what
no,
happens,
no,
or
it's
should
okay.
we not?
It's okay,
Maggie
'cause some
Simpson.
people-
Maggie Simpson.
Maggie Simpson did it.
Laura Palmer tried to steal her candy.
I didn't know who shot Mr. Burns. I would watch that live.
Kid at school spoiled it for me and felt really pleased with himself.
Yeah, well,
Um,
kids do.
The other SNL sketch, the monologue. No, but I think this is a little important.
Let's talk about Twin Peaks after this.
Right after this.
Okay.
Yes. There's the one that's the full parody. That's Chris Farley's first appearance on the show.
Wow.
Where he plays
Leo.
And the whole premise of the sketch
Pretty
is that
good
Leo's
casting.
walking in and saying, I did it, I'm guilty.
He's very good.
He's very good.
Yeah.
And from like where you leave the show at the end of season 1, you could see that being like, well, Leo's certainly wilding out by the end of the season. He seems super dangerous and crazy.
The minor bird called Leo out.
Right. And Cooper keeps on going like, this is interesting. This gives me some new ideas in the case. And everyone's like, he just confessed, except that the case is closed, right?
Right.
The monologue is Kyle MacLachlan comes out and he's like, I had this fun idea to do sort of a question and answer with the audience. I don't think anyone's ever done this in their monologue before. And the first question is like, how do you pronounce your name? And he's like, it's McLaughlin. And they're like, oh, great, thank you. And the second question is like, where are you from? And he says the name of his town. It's the most mundane thing, right? Like the audience is laughing at like, these are uninteresting questions and answers. And then the third guy is Jim Downey stands up and he's like, hey, less of a personal question, more of a Twin Peaks fan. Who killed Laura Palmer? And he goes, oh, it's Shelley the waitress. Any other questions? And then like a stagehand comes and goes, Kyle, there's a call for you in the control room. And he gets in there and he picks up the phone. He goes, oh, David, hi. They show a still photo of David Lynch. They say the voice of David Lynch. And then you just hear like, rah, 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 rah. Oh, David, no, I hadn't thought about that. And it's like 30 seconds of this voice yelling at him for ruining the show. And the audience explodes at the reveal of it being David Lynch. Even though the guy's not doing a David Lynch impression.
But it's just they know what that is.
The idea of him was so big at that point. And then he comes out and he was like, I was just kidding. We don't know who the killer is. But both sketches are based around like, everyone wants to know this fucking answer. And this show is one of those classic examples of like moonlighting is also cited as like, the motor of the show is the thing that you can never actually get to.
Yeah.
And the second you get there, everyone's going to fucking lose interest. In that sense, it is wild where this season ends.
Yeah.
This season ends with Cooper getting shot and the mill burning down.
And not really being any closer to answers.
No. They're, no offense to them, horrible cops.
Yeah.
Like, they're not good at solving the murder of Laura Palmer.
No.
They're throwing rocks at bottles.
They do throw rocks at bottles, and that's an interesting take by them.
Yeah.
And they do have a sort of, you're right, they have a sort of overflow of scumbags.
Yes.
So they can't just be like, well, Leo seems aggro. Yeah, he probably did it. Like,
he's
like
the one.
And Laura had such a dark life that it can't just be like, oh, well, Laura was mixed up with this person. It's like, well, no, she was mixed up with like 8 shady people. So yes, they have that going against them. But I do like, they never really figure anything out. And then the killer is revealed to them kind of, without their intervention, really.
Sure.
I don't know.
I think,
which is fine. I don't care.
I think so much in like the Lynch, all his post Blue Velvet work, how much he is sort of reacting and responding to how much talk there was of like misogyny and sort of like was he using like abuse as a plot device?
Sure.
Is he being like exploitative or whatever? And it does feel like he is a guy who is like earnestly, emotionally, empathetically interested in domestic abuse, not using it as like a hot button to push.
Yes.
But the show starts in such an interesting point where you're like, here's this like young woman with this angelic like high school photo who's discovered in these horrible circumstances. And most shows would do like she was the perfect girl and she's murdered. Who would do such a thing?
Sure.
And they're so upfront with like the last 48 hours of her life were insane.
They were pretty insane.
Like they uncover the sort of secret double life of Laura Palmer basically immediately.
Yeah, it's not a huge secret.
No.
Right, which is part of why the case is hard to solve because you're just like, oh, she was in with so many bad people. All of these threads are intertwined. It's not like she has one on-edge boyfriend.
It's also like Bobby's big speech at the funeral. We all did it, right? Like that's the point, right?
Right.
And like, just like Blue Velvet, right? The real point is like this town is beautiful, and it is something that you're just like, I want to be here, but it's there's so much horrible stuff turning away behind it.
Become like the receptacle for all of the like sins and darkness in this town.
And
rot.
I won't speak to. Well, I guess it's more of a season 2 thing, but yes, like I think that Lynch is very, drawn to horrible darkness and the unspeakable crimes of abuse that Laura suffers.
Right.
And in Twin Peaks, you can watch it and you can be like, well, Bob did that. He's a monster that causes evil.
He's a supernatural force.
Right. But obviously, Bob is just a manifestation of like unspeakable things. Like if you just want you can watch the show as like sci-fi of like Bob is a monster who inhabits people and makes them do bad things. It's like, or is Bob just David's way of processing the most unimaginable thing?
That's exactly what I see it as.
But also Bob doesn't inhabit Leo. Like he doesn't inhabit other people in the cast who do terrible shit.
He has a bad vibe, I will say. I'm going to say, I don't want Bob to come at me.
Yeah.
I do think he has kind of a negative vibe that he brings to the party. And I do think he's kind of bringing the vibe down at Twin Peaks generally.
I think so.
Even though he's only inside one person, basically, he's still, I do feel like there's as Twin Peaks goes on, the point is like, we're very close to, the darker world
but
here.
I think it's what you said.
The
I
Black
think
Lodge.
There's this like interestingly pure, almost childlike view of like, what we've talked about this, but the blue velvet thing of like, look at this perfect lawn, and then like 6 inches below there's worms and an ear and all this sort of shit that people read as him saying, oh, secretly all of these places are evil, which is not what he's saying. What he's saying is what he finds confounding about the world is that these two things exist dancing against each other, right?
That's cool.
And Bob is like him. In my view, much like what you said, is him being like, I do not understand how people can be outwardly nice and polite and capable of something this evil.
Right.
You saying there's an argument that like, well, that's a face and that's an act that someone puts on to cover up their evilness. But he's still like, this type of action is unfathomable to me. Right. And the only way that someone could be capable of doing that and also making polite conversation is if there's some other force at play that I don't understand.
And also if someone like the FBI and a sort of a hero from another era steps in and is like, I'm here to solve the case.
Right.
And it's like, what happened? This awful thing happened, Dale. Mm-hmm. Like this terrible, terrible thing happened to a young woman.
Yeah.
And here's what, we were finding out about it. And he's like, must be like a monster. Like, like that's what I can defeat. I can't defeat like ambiguous, inhuman behavior, but I can fight like evil spirits, like, right? I don't know. That's like, it's a perfect thing for Dale to try to deal with. And I think as Twin Peaks goes on, especially in The Return, it's about the limits of what Dale can achieve. Like Dale thinks he can deal with this stuff, but he can't.
And especially this town that basically has this like pipeline for commodifying young women.
Yeah.
Like basically waiting until the moment they get
One-Eyed Jacks is a legitimate establishment.
I'm not questioning that. They got a very strong business model.
It's really nice. Like I gotta say, it's maybe the nicest brothel
It is the
ever
nicest,
depicted.
Disgusting underage brothel that is a cocaine hub.
It does. Look,
it's like Adam McGoyan's Exotica of like brothel. Like,
dude, Adam McGoyan's Exotica is where you're like, who had the money to build this? It's huge. Like, is this seedy or is it like Disney? It's massive. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, if I saw One-Eyed Jacks like featured in like an Architectural Digest spread, I'd be like, this place is lovely. If you weren't telling me what the business was.
Look, I have a membership. I just hang out at the bar.
It's just,
you don't have to fuck any underage girl.
You bring your laptop there, you just go there to write.
Yeah, exactly. You can gamble a little bit, but it's like, you just get a martini, you chill.
Yes.
One-Eyed Jacks is a good epitome of like, summation of Twin Peaks, right? Where you're like, God, yes, the vibe's immaculate. What happens here? Oh, incest, child abuse, drug dealing, like terrible, terrible things.
This one
everyone who works
guy
for
who's like got his fingers in all of the like quaint businesses that the town uses the fucking perfume counter as a pipeline to funnel young women into prostitution.
That's why Twin Peaks. I had seen Twin Peaks, but now we're doing David Lynch. I'm going to watch Twin Peaks, and I'm like, man, like, is it going to bum me out to like mainline Twin Peaks? Like, Twin Peaks is disturbing.
Yeah.
And I'm watching
you
it
had
now.
That pushback on when we were doing Park-Chan Look, where you were just like a lot of kids dying, and roadies as well. You similarly wanted to.
Park Chan-wook remains the most bummed out I was delving into a filmography that I had largely seen.
A lot of dead kids. Run straight through. Yeah. And JJ, our researcher who loves David Lynch, has been in a little bit of a like.
He's in a funk.
Yeah.
I'm not. I love this shit. For whatever reason, it tells the stories in a way that I can handle better. And I've been very happy having just Twin Peaks on and thinking about Twin Peaks, even though, yes, then I will be like, oh God, but it really is about something that's awful.
I do think, I mean, and I think that's the reason why some people, especially at the time, now I think this has basically been dropped as a conversational thread, but like, is there something crass about the way that Lynch keeps going back to this as a subject or inciting plot points or, dramatic centers or whatever? And I do think it is just him constantly trying to wrap his head around how could this happen?
Right.
Right?
In somewhere that I love or somewhere that I think is cool or.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is just, I mean, this is cultural
what do you
conversations we're constantly having are just like, it happens so much more than you think it does.
Yeah. I mean, if it's like this in Mulholland Drive too, it's like
Right.
the magic of Hollywood or the magic of,
Yeah. It's
This
beautiful and
veneer
terrible.
of any form of polite society or business or, normal quote unquote behavior. David snapping.
The pilot begins with Laura Palmer's corpse is discovered wrapped in plastic. What do you guys think of that? I don't know how to tackle Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how we do this.
Sure.
Are you going to do the summary of the entire season?
Yeah, let's do it line by line. No, this is what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what we do now. What do we do now, Griffin?
David's glancing at the clock.
Talk about standout characters, maybe?
Yeah, I feel like going through it
Maybe
episode by
that's it.
episode
Well, that's
maybe
not-
makes less sense than talking holistically about the season
characters.
plot lines.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's maybe
character
the
by
best way to
character is
do
the
it.
better way to go.
Because
through.
it's also, obviously the crime is keeping you engaged and wanting to see this through. But I love the characters.
The characters are what's so special.
That is very like there is a certain weird angelic serenity.
Yes, it's being
on
presented
her
to
face.
them in this sort of beautiful, terrible way.
Right. She's painted in like almost stylized like blue frozen lady makeup.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there is this odd, and even just the way the plastic splays around her and whatever.
And she's connected to kind of the river and the waterfall, which is so iconic. It's where I had my first kiss.
Wow.
The waterfall?
Yeah, the waterfall.
Whoa.
This must be so weird for you
Did
to
someone like
watch
take
and
you to the
have
waterfall
Yeah.
and you were like, oh, I'm being taken to like make out point? Like
Yeah.
this is like where it all happens in Falls River or whatever the hell.
Did you find
Snoqualmie
that
Falls.
most of the other people you were growing up with there had watched the show or similar to you where they were like too weird?
Oh, no one watched it.
No
I
one
know.
watched it.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Yeah.
No one. I was in middle school too. Like, no.
It's also a time when it's harder to just watch. Like
Yeah.
you said, like the show was less available.
Yes.
I would check back in with some like middle school friends who were cool and be like, "Hey, did you ever watch Twin Peaks?" But I'm not
Are
sure.
those waterfalls nice?
They're
look
so
beautiful.
cool, and the lodge is really cool too. Everyone would have their like prom like parties there and stuff. But it's a good place to like. Yeah, the Snoqualmie Lodge is like an incredible building, and the falls are shocking.
They're very tall.
And Mount Si, which is what Twin Peaks is, it's just a single mountain, not two, is also a really fun hike.
It's a big bit of a goof.
Yeah, I was going to
might
say,
put that on
kind of a
IMDb.
lie.
Yeah, but
I hate being lied to.
I hate these goofs.
it is a beautiful, drizzly,
Goofs are lies.
weird place.
Yeah.
I mean,
Can you?
that's my climate. Like it's, I imagine
You love a
it's a
cabin.
damp place.
Yeah.
You would love
A
it.
damp cabin.
It's very Englandy.
Yeah. Did you guys have airing closets? That's a very British thing.
Errand closet?
Airing closets.
You mean like a mudroom?
No, I feel like a mudroom, that's where you like take off your shoes before
Yeah.
you walk in your house. No, most British houses have these things called airing closets that are like basically a less damp room because your whole house is so fucking damp because
wow.
you live in England. So there's this one room where you can dry shit out. Anyway.
Oh,
doesn't
wow.
Wait,
No.
hold on. How
Hold
does
on.
it work?
how does it work? I have no idea. But ours was like with airing cupboard. Sorry, ours was like with
College
the boiler.
Okay.
Like the boiler
It
was
heats
there.
things up.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Eva, do you remember like your dad's explanation or justification of what drove him, like what it was exactly that he responded to? Like when he pitches to you guys, we're moving.
Yeah.
You had been living in Los Angeles at that point?
Yes. And it was a combination, I think, of just my parents wanted to leave Los Angeles. There had been an earthquake that had
Yeah.
freaked my mom out. And I think they wanted
I'm
to
with
just
your mom.
get to just go somewhere else. And I think they settled on this area very quickly. My dad had around this time also been meeting with David Lynch about a script he had written.
I was going to say, it's kind of surprising they never worked together.
Yeah,
It does
my
make
my dad
sense.
adapted the book Geek Love, and briefly, like David Lynch was going to make it.
Yes,
Yeah,
right.
would never happen.
Was he going to act in it as well?
No, I
No,
think it was
okay.
just. But he had some of those Bob's Big Boy meetings.
Yeah.
And so he did say he drank lots of milkshakes. But I don't know why. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's so different from LA, and it was like just a wild move.
But your dad also did a TV show.
I was going
right?
to say,
like,
this
was he
is,
on
I was
Dave's
talking to
World?
Dash
Not to go
about
into
this.
your dad's
But he
stuff
was
on
like
MTV.
flying
He
to
was-
LA
he
to
was-
do 2 days a week on Dave's World while you were living.
5 days a week.
That's
yeah.
wild. And then
Yes.
you come back for the weekend,
Yes.
basically?
Yes, for several years.
That sounds hard.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend anyone do that.
No.
Your dad, the great Harry Anderson, whose work I idolize, always in like reading about him and some of the things you've told me, had that kind of fascinating thing of just being like very successful within show business and having kind of like a deep distaste and distrust for show business.
Yeah, exactly.
Where I understand the impulse to be like, oh, you and your brother are getting older.
We're
Do I want to
leaving.
raise the kids here? Do I want to be in this? If I have enough power that I can live somewhere else and still do the work,
Right.
can I make my own rules? It's just funny that this is the thing that he sparked to and then was like, I'm moving there.
And
Haunted
also,
town of demons.
He took a full year. I know, it was a town of demons. No, he took also a year where he just like didn't work at all, and he was like a volunteer fireman
Wild.
in Falls City.
Wow.
Yeah. And also like an umpire for Little League. He did like a lot of small town jobs, and then he was like, I'm bored. I'm going back.
Right. Dave Barry. I'm
Yeah.
going to be him.
I'm going to play Dave Barry on a show with Shadow Stevens.
What's his world like?
Yeah, what's that guy's world like?
Yeah. So weird choices overall. Mom, if you're listening to this, I'm probably wrong about a lot of it.
Sure.
She
You were
listens
young.
to my podcast.
Does she really?
Yeah, she likes to listen to
Hi,
podcast
Eva's mom.
episodes. Hi, Eva's mom.
All right. So, okay. Let's characters. Okay. So Dale Cooper.
Yes.
What do we think of him?
I
Played by
think
Kyle MacLachlan.
I-
He's a
I-
special agent in the FBI.
I texted you guys this.
Yeah.
Let's just get into it. Problematic.
ACAB.
Problematic fave.
Eva wants to drag Dale Cooper on Maine. He has not aged well.
I think
No, not really. But it was a fun text chain for us to be saying that he was a fuckboy.
I do think
We were doing the fake.
Dale Cooper,
Let's
who never
cancel
really
Dale
has
Cooper.
sex.
Right.
I do think that Dale's limitations are crucial to later Twin Peaks.
Correct.
I think in season one.
well, I can't speak to that. Yeah.
I think in season one that's less true. He's more of this really fun ingredient
Sure.
Yeah.
of just like everyone else is the small town guy, and he is so into the small town, but he's an oddity among them.
It's interesting to me that
It's like, what if Fox Mulder never left? Like, he shows up to do an X-File
Sure.
in some weird town where they're like, yeah, the fucking, whatever, Jersey Devil lives here.
Right.
And he's like, I like it here.
Yeah.
I'm just going to stay.
he's kind of like your dad, where he was just like,
You should move here immediately. But
Right.
it's also the thing of being like, usually the cliche would be like, oh, I can't believe I'm hanging out with these yokels. And then he's just immediately like, I love it.
these are good people.
Everything's cool. It's good people. The
Yeah.
food is great. The trees are great. I'm doing the opposite of what you think. I
And
should
whenever
do.
you get glimpses of the agency or they come to visit him, you're just like, the vibes are so much more aggro.
Well, I mean, Albert, who is one of my favorite Twin Peaks characters.
Incredible.
Miguel Ferrer.
the
But
great.
when he shows up, right, like
Yeah.
he's the one who's like, this place fucking sucks. Like,
Right.
why are you into this?
And this is the fucking guy from any other mystery
Right.
cop
Right.
show you've watched.
Right. This is
He would be the
exactly
hero
fish
of
out of
LA
water.
Law.
Right. Where he's
Right.
like, ugh,
Yeah.
small town. Like, you're not even dressing. There's a season 2 episode where he's like, you're not even dressing well anymore. Like, why are you wearing a flannel
I've
shirt?
gotten to that
It's so
movie. Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
But Dale, he likes coffee. He talks into a tape recorder to
Yeah.
Diane, the unseen assistant.
This is what I was going to say. That we've talked a lot about how funny David Lynch is as like a person and his behavior
Sure.
and his whole energy and how his movies are often very funny. But I feel like he rarely has a character that is funny in the way that he is funny as a person.
Mm.
Mm.
Yes.
Like this is we're talking about how much he is an analog for Lynch himself. But this is also the only character that captures that weirdness for me. Isn't just like this is Lynch's sense of humor, but this is the behavioral oddness of Lynch. And I wonder if the key to that is having the collaborator in Mark Frost, having someone working with him who also has a perspective a step outside of Lynch.
I will say that there's a lot more of it in The Return in a very
Okay.
nice way. It's
Yeah.
like funny guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And also, as you said, like he and McLaughlin growing together and
Yeah.
yeah.
But even just other characters, you're like, this guy's just here for fun.
Yeah.
Yes. Cooper in season 1, well, he's trying to solve Laura Palmer's murder. He's very drawn to her. Sort of, right? Like her story.
Right. And they immediately identified like she has a ton of drugs in her system.
Sure.
She's tangled in this like knotty web of like relationship intrigue with a bunch of other kids from her school.
The public presentation of her is she's the prom queen.
Right.
She was the girlfriend to Bobby Briggs, who is the son of a military man and is, you know, the sort of sensible sort of golden boy. Although he's
the James Dean type of the town as well.
Yeah.
Well, no, I would say the James Dean type is James Hurley, who she's secretly dating. But she wasn't really that entangled with James, who she actually thought of as a sort of sweetie pie more than like a dark, you know, boyfriend type.
Sure.
And she was actually also a sex worker.
I was going to say.
Who was maybe part of One-Eyed Jacks, but would also just like be a random sex worker. She was a drug addict.
Well, the facts they get at immediately are she had a bunch of cocaine in her system. She had 3 sexual partners in the last 24 hours of her life. Like all these things that just immediately feel incongruous with the still photo.
Sweetie pie.
Yeah, just this tutor, this nice tutor.
But then, so she was a tutor. She did Meals on Wheels.
Yeah.
You know, her dad is, you know, a lawyer who's a part of this, you know, big part of the city. Like, you know, grew up in this picture perfect life, yada, yada, yada.
Dude, I think it's at the beginning of season 2 where Russ Tamblyn says the thing of like, it almost feels like he's implying that Laura Palmer killed herself. And Cooper pushes back on it. And he's like, I'm not implying she killed herself. I'm just saying she might have allowed herself to be killed. Which feels like the key to the character is this feeling of like there was so much suffering going on for someone who was trying so hard.
Yeah, that's like really well put.
Yeah.
But I would say throughout season 1, we learn lots of things about Laura, but we don't learn who killed her really. And Cooper will have these dreams where he goes to another place with a chevron floor and red velvet curtains.
A little similar to our room. People ask the kind of room we record in, and it is very lodgy.
We don't have a chevron floor, though.
We have big red curtains, but then the walls are white, but it's similarly just a weird, perfectly cubed, windowless room.
What if we had some statues? You know, like a little Venus de Milo.
I put a Buster Keaton statue.
Really quick, when I was in Moscow years ago with Amy Nicholson for the Moscow Film Festival, I went to a knockoff Sleep No More that they had in downtown Moscow. And
Eva, you will go to a knockoff Sleep No More in any country.
And the way they onboarded you in Russian was they brought you to a room that looked exactly like the Black Lodge, and they played the Twin Peaks theme.
Oh, so it was over.
Yeah, and then they gave you some Sleep No More masks that they had stolen from Sleep No More.
This rules.
And then they sent you into the mansion, which was full of you know, dancing people. But it was very funny to just be like, oh, they just did
you're using the shorthand of like this kind of vibe.
Yeah, it's like this. All of Twin Peaks just stolen.
But as you said, there's a lot less of that in the first season.
And he's more drawn to this like life.
Yeah.
And these people. He loves the aesthetics of the local cops, their coffee, their donuts.
Yes.
He thinks they're like good, moral people.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting because he's basically entering this like den of immorality in a weird way.
Cheating and lying.
Right. And like he meets Josie Packard and the first thing he says to Truman is like, how long have you been sleeping with her? Like, it's not like he's like morally upright in that way.
Sure.
But he sees like goodness in the good characters of Twin Peaks.
It is wild how much sex everyone is having with everyone
except for Dale Cooper
on the show. Correct.
I
Dale
feel
never
like
fucks anybody.
If the story is true, Laura Flynn Boyle saved us from maybe feeling
thing.
Weird about Dale Cooper.
Lynch and Frost at the time were like, that was going to be one of our big threads for season 2. And one of the reasons the season went off the rails
is very lost in season 2.
Was because we couldn't have them end up together. And I'm like, I think history, it's probably better the way the dynamic plays out.
Exactly. Of like the tension of it, like she's got a big crush on him. He does the right thing instead of be like, yeah, sure, I'm going to fuck this teenager.
Right.
Audrey, who is the high schooler who goes the least to school of these high schoolers who never go to school. You're like, I'm like, is Audrey even enrolled? Like, is anyone aware that she's not at school? There's one episode where someone says to Ben Horn, like, you know, your daughter hasn't been like seen at school in 3 months. And he's like, oh yeah, where is she? And it's like, she fucking lives at One-Eyed Jack. She's like an FBI undercover agent, sort of. Like, I mean, like, isn't she supposed to learn algebra or whatever?
She's just going around your hotel bothering groups of people.
But I like that she's sort of his weird version of like, an Encyclopedia Brown, Hardy Boys.
Yeah, Nancy,
right.
Nancy Drew. Yes.
Yes.
She's funny because she should be entangled in there's sort of a love triangle, right? Like a love rhombus. Because it's like Laura now dead.
You
Bobby,
bang. Go on.
Hey, rhombus. Bobby, her boyfriend. James, her actual boyfriend.
Right.
Donna, her best friend, but Donna likes James. Right?
That's what's funny. Everyone in this show is cheating on everyone else, and you're like, wouldn't this person be upset? And they're like, no, because they're having an affair with the
They're
other
actually
person.
worked up about that guy. Right.
Everyone has two partners,
Right,
at
like because
least.
Bobby actually really likes, Shelley, the Machinomic character,
Right.
but Shelley's married to Leo, who's abusive. But Leo actually likes evil, I
Right.
guess.
He just
He's
likes
fucking
evil,
evil.
yeah.
Right,
He's
just
going
being
balls deep
awful.
in evil.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, then you have Peggy Lipton, the beautiful, perfect, beautiful Peggy Lipton.
Insane.
How do you feel about her, though?
She's so gorgeous.
Yes.
As Norma, the diner owner, the double R is the diner, and she really loves Big Ed, but Big Ed is married to
One-eyed.
what's her name? Jesus Christ!
I said her name
Nadine.
You
wrong.
said her name.
Nadine, right?
Nadine, the great Nadine, who is of course insane.
Right.
And again, it's another great Lynch thing. Nadine is clinically depressed / bipolar or something, right? Like she has like a medical, like mental illness.
She also has one eye.
She does have one eye. We learn why.
But she does not work
later.
at One Eye Jack's.
No.
She doesn't work at One Eye Jack.
These are the subtleties.
But like,
These are the nuances.
Nadine is a sad character.
Yes.
And Big Ed, his love for her is real. Like, like you get, or like his protectiveness for her, even though he doesn't like want to be married to her.
Ed, I think, is like one of the,
He's the best.
warmer characters on the show.
I love
right?
Ed so much.
Yeah, because like not Bobby, James isn't even his son.
Yes.
No, James is just his like ward.
It's just a guy who shows up on his bike and is
nephew or
like, "How you
something.
doing, James? You need some advice today?"
But like Ed's like so Nadine is like compellingly tragic.
Yeah.
But also she's obsessed with making silent drape runners.
Right.
And that is objectively just fucking funny.
Yeah,
like
she's
when
like-
she's yelling at him about cotton balls and oil and
He
stuff.
doesn't
annoying.
get into season.
In season 2, she just thinks she's a teenager and
But
gets
also,
superpowers.
Big Ed explains the whole history of the
He does,
relationships where it's
yes.
sort of like there were these kind of sliding doors of
Right.
like, yes.
These moments where we could have broken up and then something tragic happened and we were fused back
Well,
together.
but also that Peggy Lipton was like his high school sweetheart. Everyone thought they were going to get together, and then they were like on a break, and then like briefly, this one moment they get married very quickly. Him and Nadine, and
Peggy Lipton's so hot.
Who's her evil husband? Dawn?
Norma's evil husband?
Nor?
Yes. Fuck. One of my least favorite characters.
he's just a little
Hank.
But Hank's a great actor.
Great actor. Love that actor. And Chris Mulkey's the actor. I feel like he never has much to do in Twin Peaks.
He's a little one note as written.
He's just like,
Right.
I'm worse than Leo.
right.
Is he?
He's sort
He's
of.
kind of better and
Can I
worse.
give you my take? He's Snake from The Simpsons.
Oh, he is.
Where
Yeah,
it's like, I'm a criminal.
You need to do a bad thing?
Right.
I'll shoot someone.
And he's even sort of got the hair, and you're like, I get that your whole identity is doing crimes. You don't seem that bad. You
Yeah.
seem illegal.
Whereas Leo, it's like, dude, like Leo feels like a guy that I would be like, hey, how you doing, man? He's like, the fuck? And
Right.
like push me across the room and I'd be in a fight with a guy I'd never
Right.
met. Like
Leo has great fashion, though. I kept
Yes.
noticing he had really good shirts
Yeah.
and jackets.
Leo is played by Eric DeRay, who is Joanna Ray's son
With Aldo. Right?
with Aldo Ray.
Yeah.
And so in a way you're kind of like, oh, are they just because like Leo in season 1 especially, it's like he's not that important.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's just Shelley's awful husband and he's mean to her and he's very obviously a possible Laura Palmer killer, maybe
Sure.
too obvious,
Sure.
right? And you're like, did they just give this guy a role just kind of being nice, right, to Joanna Ray, I guess? But he kind of, especially later, he kind of rocks,
I
like
agree.
the actor. Like
Yes.
there's a weird, crazy humor to him.
Yeah.
And he's sort of kind of like what you're saying about Chris Mulkey, like a cartoon in a nasty way, but like in kind of a pivotal way, right? I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
trying to
no,
describe
I agree
Leo.
with you. Yeah.
Can we talk about all the teenage boys together?
Okay,
Please.
so the teenage boys. We got Bobby,
Mhm.
played by Dana Ashbrook, my personal favorite. I love
Yes.
Bobby.
I guess, is Bobby more the like Warren Beatty Splendor in the Grass archetype?
Sure, but he is the golden boy. He's supposed to
Right.
be kind of like the football star. right? He's
But
supposed
he
to.
does have that like you're tearing me apart
Yes.
energy, which it's why I invoke James Dean.
That's fair.
He's maybe not the James Dean character archetype, but I feel like in the emotionality of the performance,
Yes.
he's got the James Dean energy.
He's got the anger. He's also
Yes.
like he's like one of the Jets.
Yes.
Yes, because James, even though he has the aesthetics of Marlon Brando or whatever,
Right.
like this biker boy, James Dean, whatever, he's a very sweet boy.
Yes.
Like he's very soulful.
And he's more emotionally bottled.
right. And Laura
Yeah.
was clearly drawn to him not because she wanted to fuck him, but because she like saw the kind of sweetness and sadness in him.
Yes.
Like
The actor, remind me his name.
the actors, of course, James Marshall.
Jumps from this, has beyond key role in A Few Good Men.
Oh.
Oh, of course. He's really good in that
Right,
scene.
really
He
good.
is.
And I was like,
Yeah.
why did this guy not have a bigger career?
Hmm.
And he comes back for The Return or whatever. I read that he launched a like $15 million lawsuit against Accutane, the acne
the
medication.
crazy acne medication.
That
sure.
he had very bad acne and was taking it in these early days of his acting career. And then it caused him serious health problems. And it sounds like one of these
You can have
cases.
mental
that
health
stuff is really
It's insane.
intense.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah,
right.
especially
it's
back
like
in
military
the day.
grade.
Yeah.
But he like had a trial where like fucking Rob Reiner and like I think David Lynch was a witness as well.
Wow.
Like all the people who worked with him in the early 90s were like, this guy was about to blow up and his career was completely
It's
derailed
interesting.
That's
because
really
this
sad.
medication. And I believe the case was thrown out. There was some small settlement,
Sure.
but it's
He's-
upsetting. He's
good.
really, really fucking good.
He's great in Twin Peaks. I will say he is objectively, without debate, the actor most screwed over in season 2. They give him
Interesting.
the one storyline that is unwatchable. And it takes several episodes where they truly, do you know what I'm talking about? Maybe you didn't make
I
it.
forgot.
But where they truly are kind of like, what should James do? And they're like, James goes off to this story, and you'll see it. But
do
I do
feel
think he's a
like-
great presence.
Yeah, he has a great presence. I do feel like it's interesting this time around. I was like, all the teenage boys are also beautiful women.
Yes.
So true. They're very pretty. Like Dana Ashbrook's very pretty.
Oh,
who
yeah.
plays
Very
Bobby.
pretty. There's
But-
also something with his Accutane face, not Dana Ashbrook, right?
James Marshall.
James Marshall, where like he is so smooth looking,
Yeah.
right? There is that weird
Yes.
unnatural quality
He
to
has a
him
bit of a Ken doll thing.
being
yeah.
on this like insane medication.
He has crazy. They both look like they have like
The bone structure.
kissable lips.
Yes.
The most
These pouty
kissable,
mouths.
beautiful mouths.
Right.
Are there any other boys we need to talk
There's
about?
that blonde boy, but I don't think he
though?
matters
Oh no, but
very much.
I love that guy.
Yeah,
What
he's
do I-
fun.
I need to find his name because he never leaves the show, and he's even in The Return. Pretty much everyone's
He's
in
a
The Return.
sycophant.
But that actor is also just someone. And what the hell's his name?
You're talking about Bobby's best friend.
Yeah,
the
Bobby's
blonde,
best
the
friend. What the
blondie.
hell's his name? Oh God, cut this all out.
Oh, yeah.
Keep it all in, double it.
Oh God, cut this all out.
Oh, yeah.
Keep it all in, double it.
Mike Nelson, right? It's the other problem. There's like multiple Mikes. There's
Yeah.
multiple. Played by Gary Hirschberger,
Mhm.
who I also know right from 6 Feet Under. He's the villain in 6 Feet Under. Thank you.
The villain in 6 Feet Under is death.
Death, yeah.
Well, no, I would say 6 Feet Under is about accepting death. No, he's the guy in 6 Feet Under who represents the like funeral chain.
Oh, yeah.
Who's
Sure.
trying to like absorb them into like whatever it is,
Yes.
you know.
That's fun.
Anyway, love that actor.
Should we talk about
Mike,
the
not that
whole
important.
sort of like the mill?
Yeah, the Mill faction.
Right.
Sure. Just to wrap the boys.
Oh,
like
sure.
it's like James seems like the bad boy. James actually basically a good boy.
Right.
One of the Bookhouse boys who we can talk at. You know, he's sort of an honorary or a fledgling Bookhouse boy.
Sure.
And then Bobby, the golden boy with his dad is one of my favorite characters and
Yeah.
is a very important character later on. Garland Briggs. He is basically a drug mule. He and Leo are basically
Right.
like running drugs into town under the auspices of more evil guys, but they're
Fueling One-Eyed Jacks, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but they're-
basically
but
4
they're
One-Eyed Jacks,
awful.
rather. Yes.
Like, you
yes,
know.
yes.
and Bobby is an interesting character and who will kind of clean it up in The Return, which you'll see. And
Mhm.
he has, in my opinion, the greatest moment of acting in The Return that like makes me cry. But he's kind of just a nasty little fucker in season 1. Like there's nothing
Yeah.
nothing lovable about
He's a
Bobby.
fucking monster.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's full of pain,
He's full of pain.
but he's also just barks like a dog. He's a little bitch.
He's cruel.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Well, there's the thing, and he's grieving to some degree, and he's dealing with his guilt and whatever.
Yeah.
But there's that thing of like, if you start a show with a dead body, and then you're like, great, we got to interview her boyfriend, and immediately you find out he was cheating on her.
Yeah.
You're gonna jump straight to fuck this guy.
Yeah. And also they're like, Laura Zetti's like, huh?
Right.
What?
It's
What are you
true.
talking about?
Because the first episode, like Twin Peaks is largely not so sad,
Yes.
but the first episode is really sad. Like Donna crying in the classroom, like obviously Grace Zabriskie just screaming, like, like
Yeah.
Leland
It's a lot
freaking
more
out.
Josie
actual
shutting down the mill.
Yeah.
Grief.
It's right. It's like,
Right.
it's more like this town has kind of been cooking. It knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
And Laura, this angel, is dead. And it's like the whole thing is cracking open. Now everyone kind of has to look at the evil they've been trying to ignore.
Yeah.
And it's fucked up. And then every time Dale is like, damn good coffee, you're like, thank God this guy's here, man. Like, he's chilling me out. Like, everyone else is freaking me out. The mill. Okay, so yeah, the mill. There's a mill, Griffin.
Yes.
Which is it's quite a complicated series of it's run by Josie Packard.
Right. It's kind of the financial center of the town.
Sure.
Her husband has died somewhat recently in a boating accident.
Yes. Watch out for season 2. Run by Josie, who has inherited it and is an out-of-towner.
Am I?
She's from China.
I was gonna say, am I wrong for assuming, knowing that I still have not watched a lot of the show, that she was someone who went through the One-Eyed Jacks pipeline?
You are wrong for assuming that.
Okay.
Yes.
I just thought it was interesting the way they talk about later in the season when you're watching Audrey go through it and you're hearing her meet the other sort of women there, that the whole idea is like, and this is how you get access to the wealthiest men in town. This is how you get their ear.
Her backstory is just that she met Andrew Packard, who's the dead husband, at like some black tie event in Hong Kong, and he like brought her over. But of course, the idea is that like she is an exotic foreigner, and everyone is a little suspicious of her for this reason,
including Cooper.
Including Cooper.
Well, she's sleeping
and
with,
she's also sleeping with the sheriff,
right?
But
and Cooper's immediately like, bad idea. Don't do that.
But he kind of respects it, though. He's kind of like, all right, Truman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then there's Catherine Martell, the brother of Andrew Packard. I mean, sorry. So, Andrew Packard was her brother.
Yeah.
And she's married to Jack Nance, Pete Martell, who we love.
Who discovers the body.
Yeah.
And
but it's mostly just
a
there
sweet
to
fisherman.
be Jack Nance. Right. Be a silly guy.
But no, what were you going to say?
She's sleeping with.
And she is sleeping with Ben Horn, who played by Richard Bamer, who is the head of the hotel.
Right. The quiet mogul.
And general, right, exactly, business interests.
Right.
Who is the most evil character in Twin Peaks, apart from like Bob.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're counting like Bob, but
amoral.
Right. And who I think we just keep your eye on him, Griffin, as we go through Twin Peaks, because like I think the journey of Ben Horn is very interesting in that the show both does and doesn't punish him.
Sure.
And if you like write down everything that Ben Horn did and is involved with, you're like, this man is like a monster.
Oh, I'm hating him already.
Right. And I think Bamer is so good.
Yeah.
Which
He's
is
great.
so funny because he's a total stiff in West Side Story.
Right. Correct.
Which is the only other thing I know him in.
Yeah. Same.
He's the lead of West Side Story, obviously.
Right. And your takeaway
He's
is
Tony?
like,
yeah, he's Tony.
He's Tony.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
But he makes so little of an impact in that movie.
He's a handsome guy. That's about all you can say, right? He's like a total zero.
That part is cursed.
It is a cursed role.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, yes, I think that's true.
Yeah.
And he's so good in this because he kind of underplays the slime.
I'd agree. Yeah.
Like, he could be more arch villainous in a way. And like Piper Laurie is actually the closest thing the show has to like a classic soap opera villain.
Yeah.
You're kind of rooting for her. She's kind of delicious.
Well,
she seems kind of evil.
Let's unpack this a little bit. It feels like this town used to be a sort of company town centered around the mill, right?
Sure.
And that slowly but surely, Horn has been building all these other businesses around.
He's got this kind of land empire, and then he has the secret empire of like prostitution and drug running.
There's both like he has his fingers in like 4 or 5 front-facing businesses. Quietly, he owns all the sort of like hub businesses of the town.
Yeah.
The mill is still seemingly sort of thought of as like the financial core of the town, even if it's maybe not the main
And
financial
it's possibly
driver.
being poorly run by Josie is sort of the,
Well, Josie now owns it, but Catherine is still basically running it. She basically seems to function as like the manager from day to day, which I think causes her the additional frustration that like it seems like that was probably the relationship between her and her brother, that she did the day to day and he ostensibly controlled the purse strings because he was the male.
Right.
And that was their inheritance. And now she's like still stuck in this position with this wife that she never really trusted, that she thinks
sister-in-law is technically yeah, that she doesn't like.
Yeah. And then she's sleeping with the guy who's actually kind of controlling all of the financial levers in the town. But the mill is this kind of contested. It's like capture the flag. This is the castle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Horn covets it.
Capture
Josie won't give it up.
Burn it down.
Yes.
Yes. What do you guys think of Catherine Martell, played by Piper Laurie, who is so crucial in season 1 and then exists in season 2 and does wild stuff, but it's
kind of doesn't really.
It's one of the best examples of the show kind of not knowing how to keep wheels spinning, of like kind of like, what should we do with the mill in the town now?
And
like
once again, there's so many characters.
It's a lot of characters.
She's kind of doing a riff on almost like her Carrie. Like Stephen King's Carrie.
I think he loves casting people who come with baggage in a positive way, right?
Teen baggage.
Absolutely. Well, it's a lot of child stars.
And a lot of
children of movie stars.
Yeah.
Right? It's a lot of people like
associated with teen movies too.
Right. But like Richard Beymer, Piper Laurie, Peggy Lipton to a degree.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You're watching all of them thinking about what they had done decades earlier.
Yeah.
You have people like Miguel Ferrer who are coming in who are like children of stars, you know? But I think
Peggy Lipton, I think, had not done anything since like the 60s.
Yeah, she had retired to raise her kids.
Or I guess the early 70s is when the Mod Squad ends, basically. And she did a Mod Squad TV movie in 79. But like, she truly had retired.
Yeah.
Lynch is basically plucking her out of our memories and like
which
putting
he likes
giving
doing.
her back to
Piper
us.
Laurie feels more relevant than all these people because Carrie had at least been a comeback that happened in between the two eras of her career.
And that's why I do feel like that's why she's great. I love her. She's hilarious and she's but like that's why she's getting Oscar and Golden Globe. Emmy, sorry.
Yeah.
Because she's one of the big names.
I love when she catches Shelley tied up in the mill and she goes, let me think. Like she has a really great delivery of just like, not gonna untie you just yet. I'm gaming this out. It's just like such pure just wickedness.
But you're also like in a show where the murder doesn't happen.
Yeah.
She would be the central character, right? Like she's like the JR.
Or the villain. Yeah, the JR, exactly. Right.
She'd be the person everything revolves
antagonist, protagonist, or whatever. And
Love to hate her.
She pushes a lot of action.
Yes.
And she does do that in the show, sort of. But it is funny watching this show, kind of like watching early X-Files or whatever, and these other shows like I do think Buffy and stuff like that in the later 90s start to invent what we think of as like modern TV storytelling. Right? Where it's like you got your big arc, you got your mini arcs, you got your episode arcs.
All these shows you're talking about were kind of pulling from Twin Peaks and going like, okay, what did they do right and what did they do wrong?
Yeah.
Thinking
how do
more,
we build this in a way that is sustainable?
Because Twin Peaks is like, let's just roll lots of snowballs down the hill.
Yeah.
Some of them will collide.
Yeah.
Others won't at all.
Right.
Some storylines will carry through. Some storylines will kind of abandon or shapeshift. Or it's like you're seeing prototypes of what I'm talking about.
It's funny that like even within the same decade, I don't know if it's 5 or 6 years later, Joe Dante does Erie, Indiana, which is like the children's TV show.
That
was great, but was also sort of like, can we do Twin Peaks for kids?
Yeah.
It feels like it's overtly that.
Yes. 100%.
And even that is like, we know how to keep this on rails.
And then Lost is like, we're going to keep it on rails. No, we aren't.
Right.
We're just going to do all the same stuff again.
I mean, Lost is kind of the most fascinating mirror of this thing, except they kept it on for 7 or 8 years. But the cultural relationship to it was so similar.
But Lost is also, if you read the pitch for Lost and like what they're, they basically lied.
Yes.
And they were basically like, no, it won't be a mystery show. We promise. It's going to be, because we can do the flashbacks. It can be a cop show and it can be a lawyer show and it can be, it can do all this stuff through the flashbacks. And it's like, no, pretty quickly it's just going to turn into what's going on with the island. Like that will be such an overriding din.
Well, it was also like, wasn't it the president of ABC at the time was like, Survivor's a big hit. We should do scripted Survivor.
Yeah.
I think that is like, yes, right.
To JJ.
Yeah.
No, first he went to someone else who has a credit on every episode of Lost. God bless him. He had nothing to do with the show. He wrote a different, it's like stranded on an island plot. And they threw it out. Jeffrey Lieber. Anyway.
And then I think JJ was
and then
the one
JJ takes over, and JJ
was like,
brings in
could we
Lindelof.
put 10% of Twin Peaks on top of the Lost on an Island thing?
Right, exactly. Like
It's weird that he's the researcher for the show.
It is weird.
I think JJ just likes to work, and that's why he he's moved over
He
to
has
our
this
show.
huge development deal with HBO Max, and like nothing's gotten made out of it.
Crazy.
So even though he's gotten like $400 million, he just needed something to do with his time.
He's just bored.
Yeah.
But I have some bad news for him. He's going to have even more things to do with the time because he's fired.
He is fired, in fact. No, it's just.
Thank you for doing a Twin Peaks dossier, JJ.
Yeah. There was another person I was thinking of like that. While I was watching this, I was just thinking about where like this is so thought of as like the David Lynch show, right?
Yeah.
And then people who go like one step below that understand that Mark Frost is the important co-author
Very important.
of this thing. But so often in these cases where it's like you bring a person from movies in to create a show, then they just fucking bounce. And people get associated with these things, but it's like all they did was set the table and then leave. And even JJ, who uses Lost as sort of the springboard to his movie career, it's like he still gets so much credit for that show
Yeah.
when all he did was the place setting
It
and
was
directed
Carlton
the pilot
Cuse and
incredibly
Lindelof.
well.
Yeah.
You know, but people still, when that show was like in its final seasons, people would be like, oh, JJ, what's he thinking? You know, and he was sort of personified in this way versus like even the drifting involvement that Frost and Lynch had in season 2 is more than JJ ever had post episode 1 of Lost.
Yeah. No, read the Mo Ryan book.
Right.
He's not even mentioned in that
JJ
chapter.
had nothing to do with Lost, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. He would occasionally swoop in to direct an episode for funsies or whatever. But yeah,
Did he direct other episodes?
JJ, yeah, he did. I can even look it up.
Okay.
You want me to look it up?
Yeah.
Look it up, Davey.
Look it up.
How many like overall-ish episodes did Lynch direct of the series?
Because David was
Okay.
thinking that Lynch only did 1 or 2 in season 2, and he did far more than that.
So David Lynch directs the pilot.
Yeah.
He directs episode 3, Zen or the Skill to Catch a Killer, which is the episode with the dream,
Yeah.
with the
The
throwing
bottles.
rocks at bottles and all that.
Frost does the finale.
Frost directed the finale. Those are the only episodes he directed of season 1. In
Right.
season 2, he directs May the Giant Be With You, the first episode back, which is
Another feature length.
No, it's
90, that's a 90-minute episode.
It
Yes,
might, yeah.
I
just watched it,
I
yeah.
forget if it's right, if it's
Yeah.
broken into two here.
It was a 90-minute episode and 2
And
hours
like
long.
again, it's like the ones he directed. You're like, oh, of course he directed this.
He directed
All
6.
the imagery I remember is from
Yes.
this, and he directs the episode after that. Or that's what I'm trying to see, Griffin.
He
if
does
it's-
the reveal episode, right?
and then
He
right,
had
and he
to.
goes away. He comes back to do Lonely Souls, which is not the reveal episode. No, which is
I think that is.
6.
well, you keep saying 6.
I think it's episode 6.
No,
of
it's episode
season
7.
7?
It's also tough to track because they into season 2 still keep calling them like chapter 14.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
you're like,
he directs Lonely Souls. It's the episode where I would say the killer is revealed. I don't
Okay.
want to spoil.
Sure.
Where a terrible thing happens.
okay,
But it's not the episode where the killer
is that
Confess?
demons?
is caught and confesses.
Yeah. I'm thinking of the Lonely
See,
Souls.
it is happening again.
Yeah.
This episode.
Gotcha.
Another
Okay.
Lynch thing.
Yes.
And then he directs the finale, Beyond Life and Death, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But at that point, it's kind of crazy because he's really been gone from the show for
Sure. He's coming
sort of
back to
part
try
of
to
the
clean
show,
up his
but
mess. Yeah.
well, he famously basically threw the script out.
Yeah.
That show is not mostly, but much more set in the Black Lodge and stuff, and has
Okay.
lots of David Lynch stuff in it. And it's very clear that he's kind of just like, let me at least end this show on my terms,
Sure.
if
Yeah.
nothing else. But
Can
that's
I-
it.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
6.
6.
I was getting jealous of Eva saying it seemed like a lot of fun.
6.
6. Sorry, 6. I just
6.
watched it again. I watched the Souls one again, like 2 days ago.
Right. Abrams directed the pilot of Lost.
Mm-hmm.
Abrams. Come on. Show me
Look
Abrams.
it up, David. Look it up.
Okay.
And he directed. Maybe that's it. Actually,
Well,
he
see-
wrote.
Yeah.
Other episodes.
But
he never- he
that's
never
I
did.
that
For
was
some
my
reason, I
memory.
thought he directed one more episode.
Yeah.
Season 1. Anyway, Ben, what's up?
How about we talk about the police force?
Oh yes, we didn't hit
Talk about
the
some of
cops,
those characters. Yeah.
because we got Andy.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet Andy.
Mhm.
Yes.
We've got
Hawk.
Hawk.
One of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
I'll say it.
Yeah.
So hot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
and what
my God.
about
The tracker thing, it hasn't aged well.
Yeah. But
Sure.
what about
But it is what it
what's
is.
her name in The Office?
I was gonna say my favorite character.
She's the best.
Unsurprisingly,
I was going to say,
Lucy.
Lucy.
The
kind
Kimmy
of not my
Robertson
favorite
character.
character. Do you know what happens with them in season 3? Do you know a thing about them in The Return?
That
No?
I just put it
great.
together.
I'm
yeah.
so excited for you to see the thing. They're in it. I mean, they're
That's
a
my
big part of
favorite
it.
thing in The Return, possibly.
I think it's a lot of people's
Yeah.
favorite thing in
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Return.
You're
there's
gonna love
there's
it,
just one
Griff.
scene about them that you will love. I
Okay,
think.
great.
You're
I
but yes.
objectively
Andy, basically you have like Harry Truman, straight arrow sheriff,
Right.
straight arrow sheriff. You've got Hawk, his loyal kind of side,
Right.
Deputy, whatever, who's like knows the woods and knows about the spirits and all that. Sure. And then you have Andy, who is
Disney's Goofy.
right, bad at everything.
His
but
hair is
Goofy's
crazy.
how to cop. Well, he's got like it is one of the
he's a
weirdest
sweet boy.
And he
balding
cries.
patterns I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And
where
you know
he's
what?
got like a bouffant and he's going bald around it. It's not like his hairline is good.
In season
It's not like
3,
he just has a bald patch in the back. It's like he's got the horseshoe and a bouffant,
Yeah.
and then a ring of baldness
in The
directly
Return,
around the top.
it's the same.
Yeah, incredible.
And I assume they're styling his hair that way, but it's crazy that his
Wow.
hair
Yeah.
looks like
It's so funny.
But he's literally like stepping in fucking paint cans and rakes and shit.
No, my husband walked in while I was watching, and he's just like, "What other show
Yeah.
would just have all this going on, and then
Right.
these two dipshits, like
isn't
Lucy
that-
and Andy, just
Yeah.
total freaks."
Isn't that a perfect example of, well, that's funny, but we can't do that?
exactly.
that won't match with this
Right.
is a dark murder mystery.
Right.
There shouldn't be someone like crying at like the sight of anything and like shooting his
But
gun
this
and
is this take I keep coming back to, which is like the weird degree of like crossover success that Lynch had for being such a bizarre artist. I think the key to that is that he's funny.
yeah.
That
He
like
is
comedy
funny.
transcends shit. People, if they're laughing, won't really get too hung up on what they understand or not.
Yeah. And it's not
No.
funny in spite of itself. It's just
No,
funny.
It's just funny.
in The Return, they both have a vague, like the thing with Andy especially and Lucy, do they ever help directly? Like, does Andy ever get anything done? I'm
he
trying to
shoots
remember.
the French bartender.
Right, there's
Yes.
sometimes where it'll kind of happen almost by mistake that he
I
does
mean, I
something
saw
good, right.
one of the season 2 episodes. To jump ahead, he steps on a loose floorboard that hits him in the face, and underneath
and
it they
it
find a
reveals
clue.
something. That's sort of right.
It's that
Andy, it's
kind of-
like it feels like Dale's opinion would be kind of like he's crucial to the alchemy of what you guys do, even if it doesn't seem like he does anything helpful, right? Like that's
Right.
what
Yeah.
Andy's there for.
Right, where he's Officer Mr. Bean.
Yes, he's-
Lucy does like hear a clock and identify it at one point. That's the only thing she does. It's not a problem.
Lucy also feels like a sort of magic force field around them.
Yes.
Of like if someone tried to bother them, they'd have to get through Lucy first, who is impenetrable.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like in a way, she's good by being kind of bad at her job.
Yes.
Or whatever, by being whatever she is at her job. She's sort of crucial to the process.
But I also love the coach a guy to tell him how to tell a woman how he feels trope
Yeah.
of them just trying to push him towards her the whole season.
Can I just say also that it is crazy that in the Saturday Night Live parody,
Yes.
that Victoria Jackson played Audrey and
So
not
not Lucy.
Lucy,
I mean,
who is
it's true.
a twin to her.
Right.
Did
Victoria
you
Jackson
watch
is
the
basically
sketch,
copying
David?
Lucy. Yes. Yes.
Ben, have you seen this sketch?
No.
I mean, how many women were on
Well, this
SNL
is the
that year?
joke.
It's like there's not a lot.
The
right?
two
Yeah.
things that like are really famous in the sketch beyond just like, oh, it's the first big parody of Twin Peaks, right? Are it's Farley's first sketch. She comes on as Audrey. She does a variation of the tying the cherry stem into a knot thing.
Where she
with
puts a ribbon in her mouth and pulls out one of those
perfect like
perfect
gift pose.
curly ones that
It's
you put on top
it's
of a
a pretty
package.
It's
good
great.
joke.
It gets an applause break, right? And then whatchamacallit? Jan Hooks comes on as Nadine.
Yeah.
And then she leaves and Cooper says something about like, I wonder if we'll see the log lady. And
Is it Phil
Truman
Hartman? Oh, yeah.
is played by, well, this is the other thing.
Kevin Nealon.
Kevin Nealon plays Truman, and he goes, I don't think we'll see her, mainly because we only have 2 women in the cast,
So
and they both already appear.
It's Victoria Jackson and Jan Hooks.
And then Jan Hooks comes back
That's it,
on
yeah.
out of breath as the log lady.
All right. I mean,
It's
that,
a good bit.
that's
Funny.
a good joke.
But it's also
right.
crazy to think about season 15 of SNL having 2 women.
Right. They panic added Julia Sweeney mid-season.
Right.
That's their
That's so
third
funny.
woman.
And then Nora Dunn comes shortly after.
It is so nuts that that it was kind of like, women on SNL, like, we'll allow for it, but
like,
there'll
within
be a couple.
2 years of that,
Right.
they actually have a good, like...
Yeah, we're getting close to, the sort of Molly
Ellen
Shannon.
Cleghorn's coming in.
Yeah.
Like, you had, like, a good bench for Melanie Hutzel and whatever. At this
Two.
moment, they're freaking out about only having 2 women to portray the entire female cast
Melanie
of Twin Peaks.
Hutzel.
Melanie
I haven't
Hutzel.
thought about her in a
Melanie
minute.
Hutzel.
Melanie
That's
Hutzel.
quite
Melanie
the pull.
Hutz
Thank you.
6.
Melanie
Six.
Hutzel. Six.
Melanie Hutzel was kind of like a less annoying Victoria Jackson in a way, right?
At least less
Hutzel was
Q-pilled.
goofier.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I mean, like Victoria Jackson, beyond the turn her life took later, she's kind of one note and annoying as a comedic actress. She
Yeah.
can be funny,
Yeah,
but it's a slim range.
She doesn't have a ton of moves.
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
I'm trying to be nice.
Well said.
She has a few
Ellen
moves.
Cleghorn was funny. I feel
Ellen
like Ellen
Cleghorn.
Cleghorn got a bad rap.
Ellen Cleghorn, like, I feel like every 18 months there is another wind of like, why didn't Ellen Cleghorn have a better career?
Yeah, why didn't that happen?
Right.
And it's like, whatever, systemic racism.
She was great.
Anyway, should we do more on the SNL Twin Peaks sketch though?
I feel
is
like
there-
we
is
got-
there more blood
This
out
was
of
the
that
other thing I
stone?
wanted to say.
I knew we got something.
Thank you. Phil Hartman plays Leland Palmer. He
Oh, yeah.
plays Ray Wise. He does an incredible impression.
He's great.
And the audience is like exploding.
Unsurprisingly.
Right.
Like Hartman is made for that.
Yes. The audience is exploding, and you feel them like laughing at the energy of like, finally someone's acknowledging how weird this performance is.
Yeah.
Now-
And can we just say real quick?
We
how
haven't talked
fucking-
about it yet.
How fucking great he is.
It's
he's
my favorite
incredible.
performance in Twin Peaks.
I think I agree.
Yes. And
Beyond
it's-
Cooper or above Cooper?
Cooper, it's tough because it's like, you're talking about like, it's like,
I think it's the
It's
most
such a-
bravura
yes,
performance.
right.
Yeah.
On a technical level.
yes.
Scene to scene.
And
Just
it's like-
I don't know
extraordinary.
how he did that.
That's my
shit.
thing. He's like the perfect Lynch actor. It's kind of crazy they didn't work together in any movies.
Well, he's in Fire Walk with Me.
Of course. Well, I'm saying he's only
but that
within
might
the
be
Twin
it.
Peaks universe.
I believe
right?
so. For Lynch, yes, I think
Yes.
so. Possibly just because he is honestly such a profound presence as Leland.
How could
It
you?
might be distracting, right? In a way to, but anyway. carry on.
Hartman is doing the dance and he's doing the bulging eyes and the crying and the laughing and all this stuff and sort of playing the mania of it and the big swings, which he does really well. And the audience seems to be laughing out of recognition of like, yeah, that guy is insane, right? This is the weirdest performance we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Now, without spoiling anything for listeners, the things that have been spoiled for me culturally, I'm watching this show and I'm like, this performance makes more sense to me knowing some of where this character's going, right?
Yes.
But at the time where people just like, this is just nuts shit.
Well-
This is just a guy doing like Nick Cage moves constantly wall to wall.
It's the thing I have long bumped up against. I had a big argument is not the word, conversation with my brother about this recently.
Okay. The great
I
Jerry
don't know
Simpson.
how to talk about this without talking about the future storylines in Twin Peaks.
Sure.
But Leland is just, I guess,
Part of it, weird grief is
right. I guess the way to grapple with how he's behaving is yes, grief. Grief is what's powering.
But that
this.
audience is recognizing that like this performance
Like,
is something
what's
weirder
with the guy
than
who
that.
basically every time you see him is like, ha ha ha, ha, how's everyone doing? Shall we dance? And then just starts like singing an old song and crying, and everyone's like, oh,
When
okay,
they're
hey,
Listen,
Leland.
his wife is also, she's pretty
She's
unhinged
amazing.
too.
It's a weird family.
Yeah.
Look, and it's just
The
obviously
miracle of Ray Wise is that he knows how to somehow, dare I say it, ground all of those
He
moments.
does. No,
it
he
is what's
absolutely
incredible
does.
where you're like, and to know that he did not know the grand narrative plan from the beginning,
right.
that Lynch only told him shortly before they shot the season 2 episodes, that
So
he's
cool.
just being given whatever on paper and going like, okay, I'll make it work. He doesn't have the pieces to justify it.
Okay, the dancing when he's crying and they're trying to hide it from the Icelandic investors, and so what's her
Piper
name?
Laurie?
Is like they're all kind of doing like a improv mirroring kind
Like
of
it's,
like
oh,
exercise.
this is the thing we do.
It's so funny and sad,
Yes,
and just is a great, I think, encapsulation of like this series and what it's doing.
exactly.
It's like all of these things happening at once.
Yeah.
Can I give a quick Ray Wise anecdote that's not the one you think I'm going to say, David?
Well, I love the one that I would think you were going to say, which
Five-timer
is you
club story. Shout out to
accidentally-
PTR. I sat next to Ray Wise at the Saturn Awards, and I accidentally spilled an entire glass of wine on him.
Aw.
on his
and
lap.
he didn't erase you with X-ray
Well,
vision
here's
or
what
whatever.
he did. He gave me absolute Leland Palmer maniacal smiling face and went, "That's all right, my boy," as he was like dabbing off his lap.
That's sweet.
And he was like, "It's all right. It happens to all of us."
Aw.
And you should apologize.
I apologized profusely.
I think I would like turn into a marble or
I will
the
too.
Yeah.
mountain of
Yeah.
smoke.
Say,
or something.
say you're sorry again right now.
Ray Wise, I'm sorry. I'm wiser now than I was back then. I was
what is
also
the other
20,
Ray Wise
and I had
story?
been invited as like a +1 seat filler to the Saturn Awards.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, open bar? I can't drink anywhere.
Was he nominated for Reaper?
I bet he must have been. I remember him presenting an award and doing a whole speech about like, finally. It was the opposite. I think it was like, for some reason they've cast me as the devil on a TV show.
Oh.
Yeah,
I
'cause
don't know why.
His only Saturn nom is for Fire Walk with Me.
Yeah.
Interestingly
So he
enough.
was just a presenter.
Yeah, he was just
Oh, what a wonderful performance.
and of course he lost to Robin Williams for Aladdin. Normal.
Wow.
He's so good in Good Night and Good Luck. He's my favorite performance
Yes,
in that
I agree with
incredible
that.
movie.
And he's great in RoboCop.
No, I mean,
Yes.
he's always good.
Always good.
Like
The
he's
anecdote
a
I was
very
gonna share.
reliable guy. Yes.
Connor, Twin Peaks fanatic, always has been trying to book Twin Peaks people on George Lucas talk show. I'd say half of George Lucas talk show's continued existence is just Connor creating a structure that allows him to send asks out to Lynch collaborators.
But the worst structure, the structure where his ask has to be like, so I'm going to be in character as George Lucas, and they're like, huh? I didn't do a Star Wars.
The funniest thing is, whenever we get a Lynch person, the 10% that he still will do the Lucas character disappears, and he just starts asking questions that only Connor would ask. He can't even frame them from the perspective of George Lucas
That's
anymore.
so funny.
Early on in the show, when we do it at the UCB and we had an inconsistent crowd, he was like, I want to do a show called Lucas Lynch. That's all about the weird parallels between Lucas and Lynch and them almost doing Return of the Jedi together. We couldn't book anyone on it. It was like the worst show we'd ever done. And then we're in deep pandemic marathons, and he was like, I want to do Lucas Lynch again. And we did it, and it was good. We had like Dana Ashbrook on. We had Kimmy Robertson. We had maybe the last interview Angela Badalamenti ever did.
Whoa.
We had a lot of people.
When you hear that, you're kind of like,
Right.
wow. should we keep this going?
You want that on the Wikipedia?
Of course, in like Connor's like, A to 3 brain,
Yes.
he was like, we'll build this around a marathon of on the air. We're not watching
not
Twin Peaks. We're
Peaks.
watching
That's
on the air.
That's like Doughboys doing McDonald's or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We get out of the pandemic and we're starting to do live shows again, and we're going to LA. It's the first time we've done LA in fucking forever. And it's like, who are the big ass? And Connor's like, Ray Wise. Get Ray Wise. We booked Ray Wise on the show.
Whoa.
We're backstage, and Patrick, producer Booker, has been like going back and forth with Ray Wise's people and like staying in touch. And it's like 5 minutes until the show, and Patrick texts the manager and says like, hey, do you have any ETA on Ray? He's not here. And the manager's like, that's weird. I checked in with him an hour ago and he said he was driving over.
Okay.
Oh, no.
And we're
So you
like,
get in a car?
oh no. We're like getting Ray just do the show, and I guess Ray's not here. I guess we're doing the show with one guest.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had Darcy Carden, so it was great without, or it was Amy Mann solo without Ray Wise.
Okay,
which was
cool.
still great.
Incredible.
The show ruled, right? But as we're going on stage, Connor's like, we're gonna walk off stage and read a terrible headline about Ray Wise.
Oh.
We're gonna find out that Ray Wise got in a car crash on the way to the show, and it's gonna haunt us forever.
What an awful thing to say.
Absolutely. Well, Connor loves saying the worst thing
Yeah.
like that. Like when the pandemic started and he said, fuck, why am I forgetting his
Griffin,
name?
carry on. What happened to Ray Wise?
And Patrick's like, his manager said he'd get right back to me. We get off stage, we don't see a headline. We're like, weird. Never heard from them ever again. Ray Wise just never showed up.
He vanished.
The manager never got back
he
to him.
ghosted.
He said he was driving over.
He just saw it in and out.
Yeah,
I kind of respect that.
I do
I think
too.
Ray Wise just was kind of like, I'm not doing that.
But he was like, I'm on my way.
Yeah. And then when his manager was like, hey, you never showed up to that thing, he was like, yeah, I didn't
Didn't
want to
feel-
do it. Just never speak to them again. Like, we can burn that bridge completely.
What was kind of perfect.
Yes.
It was, let's say this. He was the funniest guest to say didn't show up.
He Googled a picture of you, Griffin.
Yeah.
Right.
He flashed back to the echoey
That's
memory.
the wine boy.
It was the wine boy.
You never know.
And it like fell in slow motion. He was like, ah!
Yeah, his hair turned white again.
Leland is, yes, just a very powerful character, very sad, very scary, very funny. That's the Twin Peaks magic.
He's all of it.
The nightmare of being in Laura's house, I think Lynch especially, you can feel Lynch behind the camera. It's undeniable. The episodes that he worked on. That image that he goes back to over and over again, he goes back to it in Fire Walk with Me of, Grace Zabriskie. What's the mom's name? Sarah walking down the stairs with the fan going and like the light being, which is basically just it's a portent of something terrible happening. And it's also just an ordinary thing. It's a kid being put to bed, right? Like,
right.
And the way Lynch can make that like mundane thing so scary and make being in that house so scary, which is just a sad house, like, because Laura's dead. So it's just, Sarah being scary and crazy, screaming, seeing things. Grace Zabriskie can scream. Like Grace Zabriskie says, like, she'd do like 17 takes of screaming, and like David Lynch would be like, do you have one more? Like, and Grace is like, I'm all the way up. And David would be like, I think you can go higher. Like, I think you can go crazier. And she says, and he would be right. Like, he would get it out of me.
That's crazy.
And then Leland, right, just this like dancing on the edge of whatever, weird insanity and sadness. And it's the stuff that like makes my skin crawl the most, which I think is like cool.
I was listening to
Cool and
Oz Perkins on Big Picture.
Sure.
What will now be a very old interview related to the run up to Longlegs. And the term he kept using was like what he tries to do in horror and what he finds effective in horror movies is when you're somehow able to touch the membrane.
Love that. And obviously, Oz Perkins is very obviously inspired by things like Twin Peaks. I mean,
yes. No, but I feel like that's the
so
Lynch
good.
thing of like the stickiness of these things where you're like, why does that performance get to me? That image, that line, that piece of music. Lynch just is able to identify these things that like touch the membrane.
Yeah.
And sometimes they are accidental. They're discovered. They're found art. That's, hey, you, the set dresser, you're now a character. Sometimes it's someone like Ray Wise who he can perfectly direct to like capture that in every line reading. But it is the other X factor for me on top of his work being funny. Yeah. That cuts through from a lot of more abstract sort of work that a lot of audiences would be immediately allergic to.
It makes you, it's funny and also makes you sick. It makes me physically sick sometimes to watch it.
Yes. But it's, in both cases, what are we talking about? Physiological responses that are uncontrollable, right? If you're watching just some and this is when audiences turn on him in the back half of the 90s and people are like, Lynch has gone too far up his own butt. That's when they're like, this is just weird shit and I can't find any grounding in it. Yeah. But for a while, this first run, he was able to make these things that were making people laugh and were giving people a pit in their stomach. And they're like, undeniably, I feel something when I watch this, even if I don't understand it.
I love that.
Yeah, it rules.
The Hayward family, comparatively.
Right, Donna's family.
So normal and nice.
Right? Lovely and Dr. Hayward.
Their house seems warm and...
That's true.
Yeah.
I think Laura Flynn Boyle is incredibly good on this.
She's so good.
She's great.
And she's one of those people where just like over the next 15 years, she became so big as a figure and a name as an idea.
She also became a bit of a David Lynch character. Right. Yes. Like, where she plays these bombshells like on The Practice and like, in movies and stuff, which she's not really here. No. She's kind of the sweetest character.
The ultimate innocent in a lot of ways. But like I anytime I watch her in something, like I didn't have this experience watching Men in Black 2, right? Where she's fine. But you watch this and you're like, oh, right, she was a really good actor. That's why this all started.
Yeah.
She's amazing on Twin Peaks.
And it's the kind of part that in theory should be harder to play because she's less internally complicated than almost all the other characters.
She is the real Nancy Drew. Like she and then Maddie, when Cheryl Lee shows up as Maddie, the cousin of Laura Palmer who looks exactly like her with different hair, like they start to do the real Nancy Drew thing of like, well, let's crack it.
But
like we'll figure it out.
And Audrey too.
Audrey. But Audrey kind of hates them. I feel like Audrey's like, fuck you guys.
I'm doing my own investigation.
She's also
I'm going over the border, baby. I'm gonna maybe sleep with my dad. It's gonna be normal.
We'll try it. She's kind of the emotional linchpin in terms of being the one person who's kind of processing this normally, not to say
Yes.
there's a normal way to grieve.
Yeah.
But everyone else's response is so kind of bizarre and inscrutable and a little bit terrifying. And she's just constantly bringing it back to like, she was my best friend and she died.
I think Ben is right, though.
This
It's
is a
like-
human being.
It's that she's in
Yes.
a more normal home.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's not, say, like married to Leo or whatever, you know, like, and that like her boyfriend is James, pseudo boyfriend,
Sure.
who's also nice, protective,
Yes.
not
Yeah.
too wild,
Mhm.
They do seem like
Yes.
the only characters who could possibly leave Twin Peaks.
right, and
Yes.
not like be
Not
crazy
it's-
people,
Like burst
outside
into
of Twin
flames
Peaks.
at the border.
Yeah.
But it's a lovely performance.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. You know, what else?
I think we should just Jacoby
Oh.
because he's
Well, I
He's
can't
so
talk about him, but he's
odd.
my therapist. So
Okay.
I have a
Oh,
doctor
sure.
patient
Yeah.
thing with
Yeah.
him. I send him anal tapes.
and David.
And he listens to them while he sits in
Are
his
the tapes
tiki
like,
room.
are they horny?
Yeah. The
They're
horniest.
a little horny.
Yeah.
They're horny on request when he
Sure.
asks for a horny one.
Sometimes he wants that.
Yes, it's quickly.
David, can I just say he's doing great work?
Oh, he's really settling it all down.
No
here.
notes.
Yes, it's revealed
You've really
that Laura's therapist, psychiatrist, is a guy who wears red, blue, 3D sort of, framed glasses.
Uh-huh.
Has kind of a tiki Hawaiian
Yep.
vibe
Uh-huh.
to his life.
Yep.
Is played by the great Russ Tamblyn, who
Amazing.
is obviously also in West Side Story.
Yeah.
And like fucking The Haunting.
Yes.
Yes, he's in
Right.
One of the-
He's got a great face.
Oh, he's great.
and
He's a guy who touches a lot of different like westerns and
Yeah.
Corman movies and movie musicals and
a real guy that it makes sense. Lynch met him at a Dennis Hopper thrown party and
Yeah.
was like, "Why haven't we worked together?"
Well, that's
Yeah.
the other thing. He was like much like Hopper, this guy who was sort of like a studio system young character actor who then became this sort of odd countercultural figure in the Hollywood Hills.
Do you
Crazy energy.
do you guys know what Jacoby does in season 3 in The Return?
No.
I'll just tell you that he has a podcast.
Oh, good.
Hell yeah!
And that's not really explaining much, but he be getting online
Ben
in season 3.
Ben got excited about that, and I'm getting competitive.
Oh, you're like, we got to shut him out, box him out of the market.
Yeah.
Jacoby, I feel like Leo,
Mhm.
especially, and somewhat Ben Horn, is one of the most obvious like red herring characters
Right.
in a way, where it's like he just seems like someone who killed Laura Palmer. He's like,
Therapist who had
I was her therapist.
Perhaps
and I had a bit of
unprofessional
a
relationship.
crush on
Right.
her, and I'm insane, and I
Yes.
dress in a weird way, and I'm
Yeah.
very unprofessional.
And my house has sound effects.
And Dale is like, I don't think this guy did it. You know, I had another dream the other night. Let's go somewhere else.
He's
You know,
too weird.
that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
He's almost too weird, but he's a
Yes.
great presence. Ben Jacoby, are you into him?
He's so fun.
He's
The detail that he saved the umbrellas
oh, yeah.
over the
Yeah.
years
The box of umbrellas.
of different
Yeah.
tiki drinks he's had, and then labeled where, the year,
Yes.
who he was with.
cocktail umbrellas, to be clear, not
Yes,
not life-size
cocktail
umbrellas. Yes.
But that is, I don't know. He's great. Yeah, I love how odd he is.
Never explained why he has those glasses.
Is it weird to say that he's almost the only character in the show to me who feels like specifically out of the 90s?
Sure.
Whereas everyone else is sort of like 1 foot in the 50s, 1 foot in the
Yeah.
90s. There's something about his like idolization of almost 50s culture
Right. He does have
that is from a modern perspective.
Sure. I think he's kind of, it's like, the land of one-eyed men, the land of blind men, one-eyed man is king. Like, he's the most normal.
Well, also in the land of one-eyed jacks.
That's true. Right? Like, it's like Jacoby is the only one who's like, this town is crazy. I'm crazy because this town, like, I live here because it's filled with craziness.
Well, I guess
Kind of
this is my
Everyone
point.
else is like, we're normal. What do you mean? We run a restaurant or a
He's-
steel mill.
He's
or,
the one character who could be on like a 90s NBC sitcom
Yes.
without change.
Hey,
Yeah.
doctor.
Right. He could
The
be
good doctor.
right. He could be
Why don't you put this tape in a coconut?
he could be Chandler's therapist.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, yeah, of course. Like that's the weirdness of him, as you said, is that makes him sort of more normal.
I'm seeing here he was Chandler's therapist, and he asked him if he could be any more crazy.
Oh, well, that set him on a really bad path. David's laughing very hard.
My own stupid, terrible joke.
Yay.
Okay. Do enjoy Jacoby.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. What happens in season 1 that we're not talking about? Like,
The minor bird gets shot.
You really feel for the minor
It's just a fun episode to be like, we got to feed this minor bird till it gets happy again, and then someone kills it.
Until
Jacques
it repeats
Renault's
something.
Jacques Renault, the kind of obscene bartender at
I think
One-Eyed
a great
Jack's.
performance.
A really good
He's
performance.
really good.
Yeah.
Who has a minor bird that yells, Leo, no. This is true.
Leo, no.
Yeah.
Leo, no.
Season 1 of Twin Peaks. I'm just trying to make sure, like, there's things in season 1 we need to touch on before we get to season 2.
Mm-hmm.
Laura has an R under her fingernail, sure.
That's the only censorship note they got from standards on the show, was that the shot of the letter being found under the fingernail was too explicit, so they had to use a different piece of coverage.
It is kind of a nasty notion.
Yes.
Yeah. And in Fire Walk With Me, you see like the nail being lifted, which is always kind of gross. You know. I mean, have we talked enough about Bob and Mike?
I think so. They live together above a convenience store.
They sure do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't see much of them, but we do see them in the Dream episode. Bob give the Fire Walk With Me monologue. I mean, Mike gives that monologue,
Sure,
and Bob giving the like death bag monologue and all that. But these are just grappling with it out of context, or out of without the full context of the show.
Sure,
it is hard to wonder what audiences make of that.
I mean, it does feel like
where they're like, I think Ben Horn did it, and Lynch is like, maybe he did. Did you see this scene where a weird spirit just monologued at the camera?
But that's what's so wild about this show briefly being so successful, where all of these things made audiences lean in.
Yeah.
Like, the less they understood, the more they became engaged with it.
It's like, not to do future episode, but it's like the guy coming out from behind the dumpster. It's like, then you forget about that for 2 hours, but it does it sets your brain on a certain mode.
Well, I just always think about like the lost fucking four-toed statue thing.
Yeah.
Right? Where you were like, that was this moment that for me is a perfect encapsulation of the entire dynamic and the conflict about that show existing as a cultural object that we were in conversation with, where you're like, this is season 4. And now there's an image that's being introduced that is so outside of any of the weird shit that we've already been trying to solve.
I think it was the finale of season 3, but yes.
And you're like, we're adding a new thing, and the characters literally point at it and go, four-toed statue, that's weird. And you're just jotting it down in your brain where you're like, I'm adding that to the list. I need to know what this is now.
My favorite thing about the four-toed statue.
And then there's never anything.
Well, this is right, where it's like, it's such a great moment in that episode.
Incredible.
They're like, wow, that's a big foot.
Yep.
The foot is so big, the statue must have been colossal. And Saeed's like, yeah, the other weird thing about it is that it has 4 toes.
Right.
And fans are like, 4 toes. Okay,
4 toes,
what does that
4
mean?
toes,
What's
4
it mean?
toes,
You know,
4
and
toes.
they've got the charts going.
And people are like, do I move the smoke monster down? Do I deprioritize trying to crack that one because the 4 toes is now the key to the whole thing?
And what is the answer? It's like, there was a big statue built there a long time ago by Egyptian-type settlers or whatever. That's it.
And they admit...
It's cool because it's weird.
They also admit that that's the point in the show where they're like, we're going to be treading water if we don't decide on a fixed endpoint. Otherwise, we're going to have to keep creating new mini mysteries just to string people along. And you're like, that's probably what Twin Peaks should have done.
Yeah.
Did it want to stay on air longer?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Even though it ultimately pissed people off with Lost.
I forgot about this. They wrote that it was 6 toes, and ABC was like, that's too many toes. And Hughes and Lindelof were like, well, as long as it's not 5 toes, we're fine with it. And they were like, 4 toes it is. So actually, it was a network note for it to be 4 toes.
Such good execs on this show being like,
I just love the execs like, I need to do something. It's like, that's just too many toes for there to be.
You have nailed the exact pathology of every TV
network
exec.
note people.
can we just say too many toes?
Too many toes.
Too many toes.
Too many toes.
So yes, Cooper has this dream about Mike and Bob and Laura in the red room, and sometimes her arms go back, and a little man,
and he is the arm.
You know, and he's given all of these clues and these sort of coded dialogue. And obviously, we don't need to go through that. It's
Whoa, David, that was so weird. You're just talking backwards for a while.
Sometimes I talk like this.
And then Cooper uses the stuff from the dream to investigate every part of the mystery for several episodes.
Yes.
Right.
As if those are actual clues.
And as I said, I truly do love that, right, he devotes police resources to a dream he had, and Truman and Hawk are like, yeah, whatever. Do you want to join our crew?
Our bowling league, yeah.
And it all builds to this point where they do finally arrest someone who is Jacques Renault from One-Eyed Jacks.
Who just kind of fits the profile in the true crime sort of, like our reality. This is the sort of guy you find who killed the young woman.
Right.
Yes.
It almost seems like he's openly bragging about it.
Right.
He has so little filter from the world of filth that he lives in.
And Leland kills him in his hospital bed. He gets shot by Hank, right? Or whatever. Or does Hank shoot Leo? Hank shoots Leo.
There are like 3 shootings that happen in the final.
Hank shoots Leo. Jacques gets shot, but then he also gets smothered to death by Leland because Leland's, thinks he's Laura's killer. Maybe not. And then Cooper is shot by an unknown gunman. The revelation of that, by the way, one of the worst things Twin Peaks ever did.
I'm ready.
They don't do a very good job.
Okay.
But he gets shot, mystery, and the mill burns down. Leo burns it down. With Catherine trapped inside. Ben Horn does this, right? No, correct
it's with Shelley's trapped inside.
Shelley is but Shelley's trapped inside because Leo's mad at Shelley.
Because he's cheating.
Shelley, right?
Because she stole his shirt.
Right.
Catherine saves Shelley, but then they're still trapped inside.
Then they're still trapped inside.
Catherine was sent up by Ben to go.
Oh yeah,
Ben wants
be trapped in the fire.
Right.
Yeah.
Ben wants to sort of tie everything because he wants the mill to burn down so he can have the land to do more stuff.
He wants everyone to die in the mill.
And at that point, you've basically gotten the reveal that Joan Chen was in cahoots with Hank.
Yeah, who might have killed Andrew.
That was my
yes
takeaway.
Correct.
Right.
More on that later, but certainly Josie seems, suspicious as well. Josie is another did she do it? Character.
Cooper has expressed suspicion or racism. How much do you know about this lady? Can we trust her?
Sure. A little bit, yeah. She's treated like in a racist manner.
But also, but Cooper seems like he's got body language cues that he's making she might be up to no good.
But Hank's whole thing, very much on game of him being the snake jailbird of Twin Peaks, is just constantly reminding people that he was in jail.
Yeah.
That he spent time in jail and sort of talking about the balance of what he's owed for the time he gave up.
Yeah.
And it feels like, yes, he is this guy who isn't the receptacle for all the sins of the town in the way that Laura was, but he's the guy who's sort of taken the hit for all of it. He's done the dirty work. Everyone seems to have this weird relationship to did he do something? Does he hold some secret for them? Is there repayment he's owed?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I don't know. It's a lot of soapy stuff that we'll deal with it later.
Yeah.
One thing too.
Yes.
The soap opera within the show.
Well, yes.
Which is so fun as just a little through line throughout.
I believe Lynch did not appreciate.
Huh.
And that's why it's less notable in season 2. They kind of do less of it. It's
What's
very
it called
fun
again?
Invitation to Love, which is a great
good.
title.
Yeah.
And there was a plan, I think, in season 2 to do a crossover with Invitation to Love, the cast visits the town or something like that.
Yeah.
And Lynch was like, "No, enough. I don't like that." But it was more of a Mark Frost thing, and he filmed it all with his friends, essentially. I like it too.
Yeah.
I also just like that. I like shows within shows. I like internal mythologies like that are funny.
I feel like there's a moment at the end of episode
That's
8.
something that Sam Lake, the guy who did Alan Wake and Max Payne and stuff, he loves to do that. Have little internal shows running on televisions while you're walking. Anyway, carry.
I forget who it is, but there's some scene where one character, the show is playing, and they look over to the TV and they recognize that their life is mirroring the show.
It's
is it
what's his name? Leo.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
He gets shot and is dying.
Right.
The bad boy on the show is also dying.
I just like that it's an unspoken moment, but it's almost this character in his face being like, "Oh, this town has sort of become like a soap opera.
Yeah.
All this crazy shit's happening all the time." Yeah.
Now, for ratings game, I'm trying to look up the best way to do this, Griffin.
Okay.
I have the ratings of the week.
Yeah.
I think that's the best
for
way
the
to do it.
premiere. Yeah.
For the premiere. That seems like the best way to do it, right? Because the the season is less interesting because Twin Peaks was not really, a top 30 show.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say before we get to the ratings game?
I think
I
think Piper Laurie did it. Get her.
Okay. You want to put money on it?
You know what? I mean, I feel like I've said this. I watched the show for the first time in college on my TV. Like I said, I bought the DVD. And the end of the first episode when Sarah starts screaming, and that's not even her seeing Bob. That's the second episode.
Sure.
But it's just her screaming and seeing Jacoby taking the locket from the coconut or under the rock or wherever it is. Scared me so much that I couldn't go to sleep.
Yeah.
Like it's that Lynch thing where it's just like her emotion is too profound or something, and it rattled me so intensely, and it comes out of nowhere. I'm trying to think of other things like that.
Eva, are there other key locations in this show that relate to key moments in your adolescence?
Did you have your second kiss at the Black Lodge?
Not really. I mean, the river was a big thing.
Sure.
But other than that, no.
What was the vibe of the river?
It's cold.
Wet.
Would people swim in it? Was it just a hangout spot?
Ben, you look like you want to say something.
So, because you're asking about the specific area, right? Locations.
Yes.
How they're significant. There's sort of a surprise.
There's sort of a surprise.
Uh-oh.
Ben's taking off his headphones.
So I'm going to grab something. Do you maybe want to
We'll just bring it
share?
out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, Ben's doing a dance. He's putting a stool in the middle of the room.
Now he's backwards dancing over.
Okay, he's taking out a cardboard box.
Uh-oh, what's in the box?
Oh,
it's coffee.
Okay,
looks
this
like
is
coffee.
from Tweeties. A damn fine cup of coffee. Is this the coffee we've been drinking this whole time?
Whoa!
And
oh my God, is it the world's shittiest pie?
Wait, you didn't get this? Wow, it looks bad. I mean, no offense to it.
Wow.
I had it shipped.
Oh my
from
God.
the cafe.
No wonder you reacted with sort of a pause when we were like, are the pies bad?
Yeah.
And you were like,
You had an odd response.
yes.
I was like, are we doing this already?
Oh, sure.
I shipped the pie to Ben.
Oh my God.
And he brought it to the studio.
Wow.
And so this is the pie. They ship it from Tweed's Cafe. So this is the actual pie.
By the way, I was looking online. Thank you so much for this. I was looking online because I was like, I should order some of the David Lynch signature cup coffee. And it seems to be completely discontinued.
Oh, really?
I like that there's at least a Tweeties themed Twin Peaks coffee. This, I will say, quite a good cup of coffee.
It was a good cup of coffee. It smelled good too.
Oh,
Yeah.
now that's why you're mad that I didn't drink the coffee, Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
the
didn't need
coffee, you can see from the distance, the pie has visible sugar covering every inch of it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It looks very like Entenmann's.
Yes.
And that doesn't seem like a byproduct of it having been shipped. It just doesn't feel like this was actually made by a human being and not a robot factory line.
Here, my plan was to surprise you guys with how bad it is.
Okay.
But obviously,
Is it a cherry pie?
It's cherry pie.
Yes, as it should be.
The word is out. The
word is
pie
out.
is bad.
I had heard it. But I'll say I didn't try a slice during that show where everyone else was talking about how
So
shitty
this
it
will
was.
be your first time
This will
trying
be my
it.
first time trying it. I'll see
Okay.
for myself. What if I love it? Ben's
That's-
taking a photo.
I think it's entirely possible you might love it. And I was willing to risk that too. I was like, is it just my childhood associations that
Sure.
make me resentful of the pie? Or is it bad?
I mean, not to stack the deck. I don't like cherry.
Okay, great.
So I'd say there are a few hills to overcome
Great.
for this pie.
I think the issues,
I
the
like cherry.
sins of the pie are not necessarily
The
the
cherries
fruit.
aren't the problem. Okay.
The problem is more structural. Also, when you get this pie at the cafe, it is covered in soft serve ice cream.
Ugh, I can't imagine. I mean, because this is a
Thank you for prepping all this.
This
Ben.
is a
You
high
brought everything.
quality, well designed,
Yeah.
little postcard that comes with it, specifically for the Gold Belly Tweeties Cafe pie collaboration. They
Mhm.
must be selling so much fucking pie. I was only thinking about tourists coming to the place.
Yeah.
But
They
if they're
sh-
with
you can ship
Gold
them.
Belly,
I know.
Yeah. this is wild.
It's crazy.
Yes.
Yeah, Ben was. We had like a secret email chain about this.
Incredible. A baked cherry-filled legend, which Special Agent Dale Cooper describes on the show as "This must be where pies go when they die."
And no wonder you wanted to do the episode here. Yeah.
In
I
short,
was
a
like,
world
why
famous
is
cherry
Ben
pie
fucking
was
with
born.
the scheduled day
Aw,
of?
Ben.
Today, Tweety still serves a damn fine cup o' coffee and the same damn good cherry pie Agent Cooper loved. A pie locals and visitors from the world over search out and can now have shipped from coast to coast through Goldbelly. Okay, Ben is using what weird combination
Yeah,
of
he's using like a knife and a fish spatula.
and like a huge knife, like a fucking Crocodile Dundee knife.
It's so funny that Connor brought a second pie to the show.
Yeah.
What was he thinking?
I mean, look,
he's like me. He like was questioning his own judgment.
correct. And look, Connor, we will have Connor on to talk about it himself.
Okay, good.
Okay, I'm taking this piece right here. I'm just gonna try this piece that already fell off. Huh. I mean, look.
I don't hate it.
This
You
is
don't
my
hate
idea.
it?
I'm just
No,
there's
I
a
don't hate it.
twist.
You don't hate it.
Well, the filling's really bad.
I feel like the crust. My issue has always been the crust has no salt in it.
Interesting.
I mean, the crust is
you're a great baker.
mediocre.
It is very mediocre.
But you've won ribbons for
I
your
do.
baking.
Yes, I'm picky about
Pie
it.
is my favorite dessert. It's
I
like my
love pie.
favorite sweet food.
Yeah. Eva, here's a question for you.
It's edible. I was
It's
thinking
edible.
maybe
It's edible.
inedible.
It's edible. It's edible.
Ugh.
It's not great, but like it kind of feels like a supermarket pie.
Yeah.
You know, which I realize is not good. Like
No.
we want higher quality.
Yes. I'll say this. I think it's probably getting a slightly warmer response from David and I because it was shipped from Goldbelly.
Yeah.
I think if I was sitting at a counter in the diner and they served this to me,
Covered in soft serve ice cream, disgusting.
right, I think I'd be more put off than this where like my bar of expectations already low and I'm probably giving it some generosity of like, well, it probably tasted better before they shipped it.
What do you think, Ben?
This is bad.
Yay!
Eva, when you eat it,
This is like bad
It's like bad
formaldehyde
supermarket pie.
cherry.
when you eat it there on
the
location,
filling is
Yeah.
really
is the crust firmer or is it always
No,
this kind
it's
of
always
doughy?
like this. It's always
Okay,
covered in this
see,
gross
I was
sugar.
giving it that like,
And it's
yeah.
like there's too much cornstarch or something in the filling, so it like dries your mouth out.
It does.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah, this
It's
is
not
like
good.
I'm eating it.
this
though.
is like
I mean,
crust
there too.
that is just. It feels like somehow a homemade version of like a gas station pastry.
Yes. Like,
Does that make sense?
It feels like it's been sitting, you know, in a fridge
Mm-hmm.
for 2 weeks, right?
it's been sitting for one day.
I know. Feels like.
Right. We're saying it tastes 13 days more refrigerated than it actually is.
yeah.
So what this does for me is it calls everything about Agent Cooper's
Yes.
judgment into question.
Yes.
If he loves this pie,
Right.
then he's wrong about everything. Yeah.
This is important. I'm glad you did this because it is important. We need to understand firsthand.
A, he's a fuckboy.
Yep.
Problematic.
He's problematic.
face.
No sex in season 1.
He uses words that are not allowed.
And he's wrong about the pie.
Yeah.
Fundamentally.
I mean, he does flirt with Audrey in season 1,
Yes.
He does.
But he
which is
also-
not cool.
But he also puts his foot down. He says, Audrey, I've taken an oath, a certain kind of behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He won't do teenage sex.
I think my review is the same as David, which is it's not good, but I'm still eating it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
We've been recording
It's not
for hours.
inedible. That is true.
yeah,
Ben,
there is
thank
that.
you.
I've given
Yeah,
up, though.
of course. That
Now,
was
I
very
lost
fun.
the top. Thank you, Ben. I
Yeah,
lost
yeah.
the
Hey,
top
hey,
part.
thank you, Eva.
And thank you, Eva.
Oh, guys.
Yeah.
And no thank you to Tweeties, although I will enjoy the rest of this coffee.
the coffee
Coffee's good.
was good.
Coffee's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
It smells good.
Yeah.
It's if you because it came whole bean
It's a nice bag.
and it's very dark roast and it's almost like resiny. It's like kind of sticky.
So, ratings
find a cup
game.
of coffee.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I gotta go. Let's do
Wait,
a ratings
David,
game.
hold on. Let me just see. What else can we talk about?
Do you want to talk about how resiny the coffee was again?
Did you get them to ship any napkins or?
Oh, come on. I'll
There's
get you a
napkins right
napkin.
I know, I'm joking.
Yeah, you literally have a stack of napkins on
from
your
the diner.
I want some from the
dirty
diner.
damn desk.
Ben,
It's not dirty.
What is
Well-
it?
It's full.
it's sure.
It's full of love and objects of meaning.
It is
I do keep
It
a
is
lot
insane
of napkins.
how much stuff is on Griffin's desk.
You can
It's
say this.
actually
I
crazy.
feel
That's a lot.
when my desk is barren, it feels uncomfortable. I'm like,
I
what
mean,
am I supposed to
that's
do with
clear.
all this space?
Then so
Oh,
you're,
well, of course I
so
have to
you're
take a
really
picture.
comfortable right now, is what
I
you're
mean,
saying.
at home. That's my toy
Twin
noisy
Peaks,
cricket. Yeah.
we're talking basically the first weekend of April in 1990.
Okay.
Was the highest rated movie of the season.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. It
But
was
that's
basically
Kind of neither here nor
compared
there.
against other 2-hour slots. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it earned a 33 share,
Okay.
which put it in 5th place for the week.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, the highest the highest rated single movie. If you think of the pilot as sort of a feature length thing, right?
Basically, an out of the box hit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It never quite hit the pilot was watched by like 36 million people. Its average as a show is more in the sort of 18 to 20 million range. Obviously, numbers like that now would be unheard of.
It'd be
Back then, it was
suplexing
like,
Yellowstone.
a solid hit.
Yes.
You know, like, but wait, let me see. This is okay. So number 1, Griffin.
Mhm.
I mentioned it before.
Is not Cheers?
No, that is number 2.
LA Law?
Nope. LA Law not in the top 10.
You mentioned it before.
Yep. As a hilarious appointment viewing. It got a 22.3.
Murder, She Wrote?
Nope. Murder, She Wrote is nope, not here.
Hilarious appointment.
22.3, I guess, Nielsen rating.
Is the number 1 show on television America's Funniest Home Videos?
America's Funniest
The
Home
number
Videos
1 show
That's
on
crazy.
ABC. I mean, when I was a kid, I thought those videos were funny.
I couldn't. Did any of you try to make your own videos?
No.
To get
But I
on?
would make like
Yeah.
home videos, but I would not try to do, comical ones.
I would
wasn't
just
like-
hit my dad in the nuts.
Oh, I was going to say, see, I wouldn't do that, but I kept on trying to like stage funny mistakes.
Yeah, that's
it would
right.
never
Like,
work.
oh, yeah,
Right.
no, well, and they never would have gotten past their elite screening process.
Yeah.
All right. Number 1 is America's Funniest Home Videos. Number 2
Wow.
is Cheers with a
Okay.
21.9.
Yeah.
America's Funniest Home Video is still on.
Number 3
What? It's true.
is
That's
a show
true.
I just mentioned.
That you just mentioned?
Yeah,
So
one of
we
the
got
top 2
sad?
shows also was number 3
What? Oh, it's
because it aired 2 episodes
America's
this week.
Funniest Home
America's
Videos.
Funniest Home Videos is also number 3.
Holy shit.
That's
Is this
crazy.
like the first year of it airing?
Saget?
When does it start?
Great
Saget.
question.
Oh, it's Saget.
It's Saget.
Bergeron is
okay?
barely a glint in the eye of America's Funniest Home Videos at this point.
He could do the voices.
It began in 1989, so yes, this
Okay.
is its first season. So
Okay.
it truly is like, holy shit, we have found gold.
And it's like first season of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, where they're like, how many nights a week can we put this on?
yes, right. How many funny home videos can we find? Number 4 at the TV ratings is another sitcom.
America's Funniest Home Videos.
No, on NBC.
Okay. It's not Seinfeld yet, because
No.
this is the dark
No.
ages for Seinfeld.
Sure,
It's Cosby?
it's the Cosby Show.
Its own sort of, dark ages now.
Number 5 is Twin Peaks.
Mhm.
Number 6 is sports. It's. Do you want to guess
Sports?
what kind of sports it was
I'm
in
going to
April?
guess it was Highlight.
It's I assume the final of the NCAA college basketball.
March Madness.
March Madness, the final. Number 7 is a spinoff of the Cosby Show.
A Different World?
That's right.
Wow.
Number 8 is kind of I think a show Eva probably would have vibed with. Documentary show of sorts.
Unsolved
Trying to-
Mysteries?
There you go.
Yeah.
Were you a fan?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Number 9 is another sitcom on ABC.
It's another sitcom, this time on ABC. Was it a TGIF show? Was it Full House?
No, it was not Full House. It was not a TGIF show. This was Tuesday.
This was a Tuesday.
Yeah, it's ABC's biggest sitcom.
This was ABC's biggest sitcom.
Yeah, people sometimes forget this is an ABC show.
It wasn't Home Improvement. It's too early for that. People forget it was an ABC show. Was it built around a comedian?
Yes.
It was. Based on the comedy stylings of?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Roseanne?
Yes, Roseanne.
Yeah.
One of the most
There we
important
go.
shows of the 90s.
Yeah. And at birth, the greatest comedy of the 2020s. I love the Connors.
Oh,
I don't know if
you like
know
the
this
Connors.
about me,
Yeah,
Eva.
you like the Connors.
Yeah, the
Love the
Connors.
I thought you meant Roseanne's Twitter feed.
Oh yeah,
No, the Connors legitimately
Yeah,
rules.
Connors is good.
Yeah,
I heard it's great.
it's great.
Number 10 is the only thing I don't know. It is a NBC sitcom that ran for 2 years. A comedy anthology television series.
So it's kind of a Love
it's
American
not a
style
sitcom.
thing?
No, it's a variety show centered around a very famous person,
Huh.
very famous comedian.
So it's the blank blank show.
Like that, but it's like her third or whatever, like a version of a
It's not the
variety
Mary
show.
Tyler Moore thing.
No.
Is it? No.
Who else?
Who else? Someone who was kind of like a TV legend at this point.
Yeah, she's a legend.
And the show is not called the blank blank show.
It's her name and company.
Blank and Co.
She's still alive. She's 91 years old.
Is it a modern Carol Burnett thing?
Carol and Company.
Wow. Who was in the cast of Carol? and
Well, Jeremy Piven was.
Co? Well,
Richard Kind was.
well,
And then Terry Kaiser, Anita Barone, Peter Krause.
Peter
Holy
Krause.
shit, he must have been a baby.
Handsome
Megan
baby.
Faye. That's the
Wow.
crew.
Wow.
Yep.
Carol. and
Had some guest stars. Betty White,
Co. Okay.
Christopher Reeve,
Mm.
Swoosie Kurtz,
Mm.
Tim Conway.
Mm.
That's about it.
Okay.
Ran for 2 seasons. Seems like it was doing pretty well in that first season, much like Twin Peaks, and
Sure.
it fell off because they answered who solved
They
Laura
solved the
Palmer.
murder.
That is your ratings game.
The mystery of the first season was who killed Harvey Korman. Season 2, Harvey Korman was like, I'm still alive. And everyone stopped watching.
I think that's enough for Twin Peaks season 1.
David just dramatically closed his laptop,
Yes.
looked at the clock, has decided it's enough.
Yes.
Wait, you guys are doing firework. Do you want to
Here's-
save pie for tomorrow? Do you want to have the rest of the pie?
Sure.
For
I mean, this
firewalk
thing
with
will
me?
keep.
It's going to, yeah. I think that would be a
It's
really
got like nuclear force
kind
fields
thing
around
to
it.
do to our guest to serve her pie.
Well, our guest
a
is
Zoom
also
guest.
in New Orleans.
Oh, you're right.
Yes.
Oh, so then you just
It's
have
a
to
Zoom
eat it
episode.
again.
Or we could try and just ship it out.
Or we could just throw it away. I mean, there's a
You
lot
could
of
definitely
options.
throw it away.
Yeah. Look, just
How about this? My landlord was actually the one to receive the package, so I'll be like, "We saved you a slice.
Yeah.
Here you go."
There you go.
Yeah,
That's
and then
nice.
she'll be like, "Thank you."
Ew. All right, I gotta go.
David's got to go.
Yes, gotta go
Um,
see Deadpool and Wolverine.
Got to what?
Go see Deadpool and Wolverine, not to
God,
date
it's gonna
this
be
episode.
Yeah,
so
seriously.
funny.
Wait, you should bring the pie with you.
Wrap it up.
Pie in the
Stop.
screen.
Or you know what? I could go. You guys can do 10 more minutes of pie
David,
material.
David, can I seriously, before you go, you should stop by a CVS and buy some medical tape.
Oh, because I might split my sides.
I think so.
It's true.
Even this guy knows he's in a fucking movie.
It's horny
And now
too.
he knows he's in a cinematic universe.
Oh,
And he knows people don't like the cinematic universe anymore.
Pee, and just hope you start wrapping up.
Eva, is there anything you want to plug?
yeah. If it's the winter, yes.
This will be September, October.
Let me look quickly.
It'll just be around the time that Interior Chinatown will start airing
yes.
on Hulu.
This will
Yes.
come out on September 29th.
Okay, in November.
Okay.
So in 2 months.
Yes.
You'll check out Interior Chinatown.
I'm very
on
excited for
Hulu.
that show. It sounds very cool.
It's very it's got a lot of weird meta creepy stuff too.
Hell yeah.
It's in conversation definitely with this show.
You're the best.
You're the best.
Hey, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Griffin.
Just to restate, just because I feel like it is a thing that people are having a hard time keeping in their brains. But Twin Peaks season 2 will be on our Patreon on the 11th of October. Is that correct, Ben?
Yeah, that is correct.
And then we will be doing obviously Firewalk with me on main feed. And the return split into 4 episodes on main feed to end this series. But that's how the totality of Twin Peaks will be covered.
Great.
And more pie and coffee will be consumed.
Just keep sending pies out to you guys.
Absolutely.
We'll buy a good cherry pie.
Yeah, maybe
What was the Brooklyn bakery
4 and
you
20
mentioned?
Blackbird.
Yeah, that's what we
they
should
have
do.
They do
Okay.
have a sour cherry pie right now. I
very
checked.
good.
Yeah. And maybe next time we drink some of the Nightmare Before Christmas coffee I have that's been fucking...
That stuff is toxic.
Toxic.
Yes, it is
I
disgusting.
truly couldn't bear. I couldn't
even
even
bear
get
to
the
smell it.
I couldn't get the flavor out of the coffee.
I'm just telling you, Oogie Boogie's Mudslide
It's like a
has
fish
an
in the
interesting
percolator.
character to it. The Santa one I'm not going to defend.
All right. Griffin, wrap us up.
Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to Marie Barty for helping to produce the show. Joe Bowen and Pat Reynolds for our artwork. David, this is who we are. This is where we live.
No, it's not.
We are in this lodge.
No, I reject that. It is not who we are.
It is happening
And
again.
the rejection, that's the tension that keeps people coming back.
No,
That's the mystery. That's the Laura Palmer mystery.
Ben, listen to me. We're not doing this for the rest of our lives. Not 3-hour episodes is the norm.
That's why I got the fucking
It doesn't
timer.
work.
Well, what do you want me to do? Start shocking
It does
you?
work. I've seen the seconds.
All right, fine. You both have to wear shock collars.
Great.
No.
I'm into it.
Thank you to Joe Bowen and Pat Reynolds for our artwork. Thank you to Lee Montgomery and the Great American Owl for our theme song. JJ Birch for our research. You're fired and rehired. Thank you.
He's back.
He's back. JJ Birch, the return. It's happening again. Thank you to AJ McKeon for our editing. Also our production coordinator on the show. Tune in next week for Wild at Heart. You can go to blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit, including our Patreon, Blank Check special features, where, as we said, that's where you're going to want to go if you want to hear Twin Peaks Season 2. There's only so many slots.
Yeah, it is what it is. And we're going to do a very robust conversation about a very cool season of television.
It'll be robust, and we'll eat some more shitty pie.
Yeah.
And as always, 6.
6.